Okay, good morning. Commissioner Ed Rothstein, January 26th, the last session in January. 2023 is moving right along. As always, let's stand for a Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence and keep those in mind that have lost their lives in California, those last couple mass shootings and all happening. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just tragic. May their memories be a blessing to all those that knew them. And let's try to figure all this out, but just horrible. Okay, we're going to jump right into Priority Carol. And what I'd like to do is, knowing that the three of us are probably going to talk about the same thing, at least one of the topics. Celine, why don't you come on up, and whoever else you want to bring up, to talk about the pit, which is point in time, looking for, I don't say looking for, but having the accountability for our homeless in our community. It's done annually. The three of us had the opportunity to participate from up here with the team, just highlighting just how I think proud all of us are with the work you do, the coordination, the leadership, the commitment that you have to our community, and just taking a couple hours out looking and talking to folks, meant a lot. So I know I had a couple of pictures. For some reason, my monitor is not working.
I see something there.
Let me see if I push a button. It'll work maybe.
I can see it.
Yeah, so a couple of the pictures in preparation. And how many folks did you have total come out?
Our volunteers?
Volunteers.
Folks that went out in the community and then were also based at their organizations, we probably had about 40 people.
Okay. And then how many shifts were there? I know there was a early morning. Thanks. Perfect.
Yeah, we had an early morning shift that got started at about 6:30, and then we had the second wave that came in at 8:30, and throughout the day we visited over 90 sites between all of our different teams.
Right. Last night, Commissioner Kyler and I went to a reception with MACO, Maryland Association of Counties, and I was walking with a Montgomery County councilman, and he was going out last night, and I'm like, well, that kind of stinks, going out last night at 9 o'clock. I'm like, first off, who wants to be woken up at 9 o'clock on a nasty evening the way it was? So I think at least we had the luxury of going out in a relatively nice day and see what we could. There was a couple of encampments that I had the opportunity to take. This was one, and if you look closely at the door, there's actually a cat door on the bottom. So, somebody's trying to do the best they can with what they have, and this is a second, and those are basically ponchos tied together, and us, checking it out, walking up with full dignity and respect, asking if anyone's there, and if they are, going through, a questionnaire on what their needs may be, and going from that. So I just wanted to throw that out. I'm going to hand it off to you in a second. I'd like colleagues, Commissioner Vigliotti and Kyler, to say a few words about your experiences. So, please.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you. And it's interesting. We were asked to volunteer our time to do it, and like so many volunteer experiences, I got more out of it than I gave, and I hope you guys didn't mind. I asked a lot of questions and got a lot of answers, and I assume you designed it that way, but I ended up in my neck of the woods, so I could also tell you guys who owned which building and who used to own it and what was happening to it, and a couple of the places we stopped, I got hugs. I hope that didn't offend anybody, but I do know the people there, so that made it neat. And I just, it's an awesome thing to do, and it's got to be tough for, it's similar to enrollment at schools. It's whatever, September 30th, and that's what it is, and it could be totally different October 1st, and you guys have to deal with that. The day you do it is the count, and so thank you, and good luck.
Commissioner Viglia?
So I'll keep my remarks a little limited because I had more to say that I'd worked into priority Carol for later. So Ed, you may want me to go last when that comes around.
Okay.
But I wanted to say thank you for the invitation to participate in this as well. You know, as Commissioners Rothstein and Kyler had so, eloquently themselves said that you get more out of it than you give, and it really is important that those of us who are in positions being able to help people in some way do that, and I cannot commend you guys enough, and everyone who works in that department and other volunteers for the amazing, professionalism and kindness that was demonstrated, and it again, without getting too much into what I want to say in a couple of minutes, I mean, I again, count me in for next year, and you guys are a blessing, absolute blessing.
So, Sheriff DeWeese, you heard that eloquent. We are eloquent, according to Commissioner Vigliotti. Just saying, there's a K in there somewhere, I think. I don't know. But, yeah, please.
Yeah, one thing that
More
I
eloquence.
forgot, and I had written, but we all changed. We also were fortunate enough to end up at Table of Grace, and what an awesome thing they do, and to walk around that room, and it's embarrassing for me to say this. My wife Rhonda has helped there for many, many, many years, but that's the first time I've ever been there. So thank you.
Great.
Okay, yeah, let's turn over to you ladies and share with us, how long we've been doing this, some of the output from the other day, and what are the next steps forward.
So I did want to start by just thanking you, the commissioners, for accompanying us on the point-in-time homelessness count, because it really shows you, as well as our county administrator, it really shows the commitment from the county and the connection you want to have with our community to support us in this outreach, because it's not a short time that we were out. We were out for a very long time, driving to all corners of the county, and it was great to have you along, because you definitely, Commissioner Kyler was with me. I know you did ask a lot of questions, but they were very pertinent questions, and I hope that you all had that opportunity to learn a lot from everyone. I did want to say that, and I'll get to the numbers in a little bit, but I did also want to talk about the commitment that we have to ending homelessness in Carroll County. You can see by the volume of people that participated in the count on Tuesday, our volunteers and community entities, different agencies that assisted us, that we really do have a wonderful group of people willing to step up to the plate to end homelessness here. We had 7 stationary teams that were at different service locations, like our senior centers, DSS, Access Carroll, and then we had our 11 teams that went out into the community. And it truly does take a village to fight homelessness. And it is a fight, because it's not ending. I don't know that ending homelessness will happen, but our goal to end homelessness by HUD's definition is that we have a point of access for someone to get into shelter immediately. We are not quite there yet, but that is our goal. This type of effort to reach to the corners of the county takes great coordination. The driving force behind this effort was Danielle Yates, our Bureau Chief of Housing and Community Connections, and then Stephanie Chrome, our Homeless Management Information System Coordinator. So I do want to thank both of you, because there was a lot of work put into this, as you can imagine, with the mapping and the directions to go to all of these 90 locations throughout the community. So thank you, ladies. You did great work. I also wanted to say, I wanted to thank our Carroll County GIS team. They're not in the audience today, but I hope they're watching. They helped us to develop a new survey platform this year through a mobile application that allowed us to collect this survey data and information and enter it directly in real time onto our phones into this survey. And then it aggregated this data. It even allowed us to pinpoint the location of where we were taking that survey information so we could see where we were encountering homeless individuals throughout the county. And that team was Tom Dowd, Farrah Solomon, and Kevin Stevens. They worked very closely with us, especially with Stephanie, to help create this new software platform for us, and that was great. So we did get that information right away, and Stephanie could track it all day long on her data dashboard, so that was wonderful. The count is reflective of one day. However, our efforts do not stop on this day. I do want to acknowledge a core team of outreach professionals who are engaged every day in this effort, and they're not just on our team, they're identified throughout different agencies in the county. One of those includes Mike Clavin, and then his staff, Jennifer Gribble from Carroll County Health Department, their outreach specialist, Judy Nance from HSP, Master Deputy McGinnis from Carroll County Sheriff Department, Victoria Ash from Westminster City's Police Department. That's just to name a few, but the efforts of all the agencies across the spectrum that provide supports to homeless individuals in Carroll County is truly amazing, from Access Carroll to HSP's team, Carroll County Health Department's team, DSS, fire, EMS, law enforcement, healthcare providers, our faith-based communities, food pantries, soup kitchens, and especially our Department of Citizen Services, because I think I push them a lot to keep driving this forward. But really, it's a collaborative team, and we couldn't do it alone. We really couldn't. The point-in-time count does remain open for 6 days after the count, so our number that we'll report here today may increase a little bit based on additional folks that we encounter that were homeless on the night of January 23rd. That is our count night. We did identify with our survey this year 23 unsheltered individuals and 74 sheltered individuals for a total of 97. This did include 12 children. All the children are sheltered. They were not unsheltered, and there are 6 veterans, 5 of whom are sheltered, 1 who has been unsheltered for many years, and he reported that out to us. And we are engaged with him, we know him, and we'll continue to follow up with him as we do and encourage him to come into shelter. In the 2022 count, which was last year, we did identify 14 unsheltered and 65 sheltered individuals, just to give you kind of a baseline of where we are. But last year we did not do the aggressive volunteer outreach that we did this year due to COVID preventing us from doing that level of outreach. So pre-COVID numbers, in 2019 we had identified 23 unsheltered individuals and 121 sheltered, for a total of 144 individuals that we encountered that were homeless. I do want to say, as I think Commissioner Rothstein identified, these point-in-time counts are just one day. This is not reflective of the volume of work that we have in front of us and behind us that we do each year with our homeless population in Carroll County. Last year, in 2022, we did work with 507 homeless individuals to provide services. So just to keep that in mind, this is just a point in time, this is one day. And many of these folks that we encounter will get into housing. And that is the positive thing to know, because we have a great continuum of sheltering and then housing options for people to step through our housing and housing stability process. So.
Okay. Ladies, would you like to?
Just continued thanks. Like Celine said, most importantly, even though the PIT or the point-in-time count is one day every year, there's got to be continual awareness with our specialty of the outreach team. We will continue to go out every day, make contact with these individuals, and work to end homelessness and get these folks housed.
Yeah, I agree. It's not about just that above the fold picture and article that we see in a paper one day when we do it, but it is a 365, 24/7. So I definitely appreciate it. And you, the unsung hero, making it all work, right?
Sure. Since you shared the picture with the cat door, Commissioner, I'll share that our unsheltered veteran had a little hole cut in the side of his tent as a cat door as well. So I thought that was pretty cool that he was taking care of his cat.
Absolutely. Sometimes you need that. So, no, appreciate all the work that you ladies do, especially you, for really, as we say, boots on the ground and really doing a lot of the coordination. So, thank you so much. With that, do you have more you want to share about?
Yes,
This
there are.
specific?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah, a couple.
So feel free.
Want to start priority Carol?
Start priority Carol.
All right, well, thank you, Commissioner Rothstein. So the first thing I want to say is that for anybody who has emailed me or sent me comments or called me over the last week and a half, I'm doing my best to catch up to everything. I have not gotten back to you yet. Please forgive me. If I haven't responded in a timely enough fashion, please feel free to reach out to me again. So the very first thing I want to do before I get into yesterday, during the conversation last week on solar, I wanted to extend compliments to Chris Hine and to Brenda Dinn for the professionalism that they demonstrated during last week's meeting. Public hearings can sometimes get a little heated, and it's not their fault where solar does or does not go. Anyone, whether they support or oppose solar, it's no reflection on the work that they do. And I know in particular there was one comment that really did kind of irritate me. Somebody described the work that they did, the informational graphics that they put together as, quote, comic book, and I reject that assertion. I think that what they do is very professional. I think it's well received, and I think that that goes for all of our departments. The information that we received is important. And I think they're professional, they're well created, and again, they're well received. As Commissioners Rothstein and Kyler did, and our county administrator did, and some others, I had the honor of heading out for a point-in-time homelessness counts earlier this week, and I had the specific privilege of joining Carrie Virts from the Bureau of Housing and Sheriff's Deputy Kevin McGinnis and covering an area between Union Bridge, Tawnytown, and Wakefield Valley. And we found a couple of people, and we offered them ways to seek assistance. And specifically, I want to compliment both Ms. Virts and Deputy McGinnis, who conducted themselves with the utmost professional and absolute kindness with those that we encountered. And you can easily see that there is a tremendous amount of compassion that they had, and it's good to know that our county employs people like them and like you. Yesterday, I participated in my first meeting with the Commission on Aging and Disabilities, presided over by the capable Jim McCarron. It's a wonderful group of people, and I'm so very grateful to be a part of them. And two quick things of note that I picked up from yesterday's meeting. Since the new year, there's been a 30% increase in the people using the senior centers, and that number has remained steady since. And secondly, free training is going to be offered for caregivers for those who have someone in their charge that is aging or disabled. Again, it's enheartening to continue to meet so many good people who are so dedicated to this place that we know is our home. And it's enheartening to understand that this dedication, that this love is for other people. And in thinking about this, while I was driving around the other day with Deputy McGinnis and Ms. Virts about how each person matters, about how each person has a soul that is handcrafted by God, I was reminded of how complicated life can be and how important it is to remain humble and, above all, to remain grateful. We get caught up in disagreements in our daily lives, not even just political, but personal too, and we tend to focus on the things that divide us, and we forget to see each other, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have discussions or conversations. We do need to speak more often, but we also have to try not to speak past each other. And instead of, trying to find that moment now, it's so popular where, you make a statement and you drop the mic and you walk away from someone. We ought to try to find a moment to listen and try to genuinely understand. And, we may not agree in the end. We may even disapprove, but, we're not going to cast each other out in the process. And those things that really do matter, things like life and love, are the things that ultimately are going to prevail. And so I was incredibly grateful not only to help out this week in different ways, and, to get to understand and to learn more, but I'm incredibly grateful for this because of the reminders of humility and gratitude that I'm always going to try to carry forward in all that I do. And you never know who the next person you meet is going to be, no matter how old they are, or what their living situation is, or where you find them. And it is a credit to our county that we pay attention to those who would otherwise be forgotten. And I thank all of you again for all of that. And Roberta, thank you for participating the other day, and Commissioners, thank you as well. And I know we had some others as well. I think Matt also participated, and so wherever he is, thank you to him as well. So.
And Chris, ma'am.
And thank you, and Chris as well. And so thank you very much, and that's it for me, Commissioner.
Okay, who wants to follow that? Go for it.
I can, and I'll be quick. Yeah, it's we've been at this now for about 2 months almost, and it's still exciting, and I'm still learning. Hopefully, I try. Last Saturday, Rhonda and I went to Lyndborough Fire Department. They had a awards banquet, and one of the things that I was so impressed with, and we've talked already a bunch about volunteers. A lot of their award winners, a lot of the volunteers who did a lot of hours were young. All you seem to hear today is all the Lions clubs, the whatever clubs, the fire department, the volunteers you have. You know, what's an older group and the young people don't do it. Well, the young people do, and it's impressive. And their actually big award for the year went to a pretty young person. Now, they still have people my age that are doing a lot of hours and doing stuff, but it's so great to see young volunteers pitching in this county. I discussed some projects with economic development. As Commissioner Rothstein said, we did a couple different MACO activities this week. And again, thank you for the point-in-time count. And I did visit some of the potential solar sites just to get an idea of how they looked and where they were. And similar to your comments, I've talked to a number of citizens about issues. I've gotten emails, I've gotten phone calls, and I'm trying hard to get back to everybody in a timely manner. But 2 points I want to make. One, if people want it, anything they talk to me about will remain confidential as where it came from or whom it came from. And I just want to emphasize that, because so many people seem to be afraid to voice their opinion because you're going to right away say, oh yeah, John Smith told me whatever. Well, that's not how it works. And as my eloquent commissioner said, call, email, please contact, and on my emails is my cell phone number, and please call. Emails can be cold. I can be blunt to begin with, but emails make it even look worse. So I love talking. Thank you.
Absolutely. Commissioner Garing.
Yeah, I'll forego my time, for the interest of time. I'll forego my priority, Carol, but I want to mention why the seat next to me is empty. Commissioner Gordon's attending a very important ribbon cutting ceremony for a very important business in Carroll County that's expanding, so I'm sure he'll have more to say about that at a later date, but he'll be joining us later. But that's all.
Okay. I have a February 28th a town hall meeting, and it's a special town hall meeting from the comments and impact that I received from, I guess, 2 weeks ago. And it's specifically focused on a proposed storage facility down in the Eldersburg area in the Carroll Highlands community on 26. More information to follow on that, but I have the developer for that proposed site that's going to be there with me and get input from the community. And it kind of dovetails with what Commissioner Kyler shared is, you know, we're here. We don't have all the best answers. You do, collectively. Getting that information to us is so important. Social media is absolutely not the best way to do it. One, as a commissioner shared, it can be a sewer or it could be sewage that goes in. If there's comments that are directed to any one of us, pick up the phone, email, text, phone call. Social media just doesn't cut it, because, at least I know for me, and I believe the others, there's not going to be this interaction on social media because there's no value. But there is lots of value in picking up the phone or calling or coming in and having a conversation, because there's a lot of activities that are happening in our community, and we want to address all of them. So I ask that we just continue to push forwards towards that. I know sometimes I'm a broken record in sharing that, but it becomes challenging sometimes.
It's not a broken record, it's a good song.
Yeah. Okay. And as I shared, honestly, what's on my mind is the horrific events that have been happening in California, the couple of murders that happened, or mass murders, and I just, wishing that strength and courage is given to the families and friends, and that all the memories be a blessing to those that have been lost, because it's pretty sad. And just knowing that it can happen anywhere. So that's kind of what's on my mind. Okay, I apologize, ladies, for keeping you up here. You didn't have to, and I didn't say go ahead, but
Thank you
thank you
again.
so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Really,
We'll keep your names on the list for next year.
Absolutely.
I think they just got volunteered.
That's right.
No, we're voluntold. And Ms. Wyndham was color coordinated and all looking good out there. I was like, really? Okay, Sheriff DeWeese and team, why don't you come on up and approval to lease space for the offender diversion unit.
I think we have a couple PowerPoint slides, but I will try and explain all this as eloquently as possible. There's a lot of moving parts to what I'm going to explain, but before I get started, you guys know Mrs. McDonald. Behind me is Colonel Strine, he's the warden. Next to him is Colby Brewer, he's the program manager for the offender diversion unit, or pretrial as you would know it. He's been the program manager since 2013. Do you want to go ahead and read the...
So good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So we're here before you this morning. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office, in coordination with management and budget staff, request your approval to lease space for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office Offender Diversion Unit. The CCSO requests your approval for one of the options for lease payments. With the new law enforcement building being located on the Greenwood Avenue complex, the building currently housing the staff that work in the Offender Diversion Unit in the roadway building, as it's fondly known, will need to be taken down. After reviewing several options for moving housing and finding housing for the staff, the best option is to lease space long-term for them. A proposal to lease space at 37 South Cranberry Road has been received. The space will be sufficient for the long-term needs of the unit. In addition, the landlord is open to several payment options which are listed below. So Sheriff DeWeese will continue on.
So I'll give you kind of an overview of what we're looking at. As Ms. McDonald said, we're looking to lease space. It's approximately 3,000 square feet, exactly 3,082 square feet at 37 South Cranberry Road. That is the Cranberry Business Center, is what it's called. So as we show the map, it's kind of right there next to the Texas Roadhouse. And as you look at the map, it's about 2,000 feet from our current pretrial release, or the old roadway building, which she's pointing at now. So the proximity is right there. Mackenzie Real Estate Services is who we've been negotiating the contract with. A little bit about the offender diversion unit, or pretrial. It's currently located at the old roadway building. It's been there since 2011. The building is approximately 4,200 square feet. The offender diversion unit pretrial currently has 1,700 square feet of space, which includes pretrial, electronic monitoring, and our transportation unit. There are 11 employees that work out of that particular office. The warehouse portion, as you see the back, is approximately 2,500 square feet, and we house records there, inmate supplies, and some evidence in that particular section of the building. And next to the building is our impound lot that we store vehicles, motorcycles, those sort of things that we store for any particular reason, primarily for fatal collisions that take place, or search warrants that need to be executed. The pretrial release model itself started in 1996. It used space under the jail that was adjacent to our patrol unit. They quickly grew out of that space, and in 2011 they expanded and used inmate labor to clean the front of the old roadway building so that they could start using that as their operation. At the time, the building only had 2 bathrooms for both employees and inmate testing. And in 2017, the county approved a project so that we could build an additional bathroom so that we can handle the amount of urinalysis and drug testing that was taking place. The pretrial concept model in 1996 was years ahead of its time, and it's now, this particular pretrial is a model for all other local detention centers throughout the state. We regularly get calls and farm our folks out to other detention facilities so that they can model our program. The pretrial ODU section currently monitors a number of individuals. They generally rotate between 200 and upward of 240, 250 inmates that go through that facility at any given point. They do approximately, in 2022, they did just over 5,500 urinalysis. They typically have what we consider a rate of compliance of about 96% when we look at who's court ordered to that particular program. So essentially, and I believe I've explained to the commissioners before, if pretrial did not exist and we had no model like that, instead of having 150 inmates in our jail, we would balloon up probably to upward of 300 or over inmates. These individuals, these cases, kind of the way the pretrial model works, individuals are arrested. They go before a district court or a circuit court judge, and one of those judges typically orders them to be under the pretrial model or monitored by pretrial. They go directly over to pretrial. After the judge orders them, they register, and Mr. Brewer's staff starts that monitoring in one way, shape, or form, whether it's regular testing, sobriety, or home detention. One of those things takes place that Mr. Colby's staff starts to schedule. So the proximity to the courthouse is extremely important because most of these folks are walking from a courthouse to pretrial. The pretrial model itself, individuals generally stay in that monitoring realm for an average of about 150 days. So from the time they hit pretrial, about 150 days, they're in that pretrial system, and they constantly rotate. So there's new clients on a regular basis that come in and out of pretrial. We did look at multiple locations throughout the Westminster area. This particular location happens to be perfect because of its proximity. It's wide open and will be built out by the owner to our specifications. The owner will add 2 additional bathrooms so that we can get arrestees in and out in a timely manner. And the location is large enough that we can expand if need be. And this is the future of corrections, the community corrections model or pretrial model. So we met a couple weeks ago about that particular location in that compound, and I believe I've taken most of you around there. This request is the beginning of a multi-stage project to move the offender diversion unit or the roadway building out of there in pretrial so that our future headquarters can be built. There are 3 capital projects that surround this particular property. Project number 1, which is what we're talking about today, is a $1.2 million project to move everything and everyone out of roadway and take it down. So how does that work in the original project design? The original project design of $1.2 million was to contract with a company and put office trailers somewhere on the compound, presumably behind the historic jail in that parking lot. That would obviously require utilities, plumbing, electric, those sort of things. And those trailers would stay up for several years so that projects number 2 and projects number 3 could take place. Project number 2, once project number 1 is done, which is to take down the roadway building, would be to start the law enforcement headquarters, which would go really right exactly where pretrial is currently sitting. That project is already on the move. We've contracted with an architectural firm, and we're about to put out a construction at-risk RFQ to start looking at construction management firms for that project. And finally, project number 3, which is a $1.42 million project, would be to construct the old patrol division so that we can then take down those trailers and move pretrial back under the jail where honestly they originally started. I said the reason we're here today is to ask for you guys to discuss this, look at the options, ask questions. We have a couple of options that are on the summary that we want you to look at. We believe that the 2,000 square feet, or the proximity of the 3,000 square feet and the proximity to where we're located is vitally important. I've had some discussions with some of you regarding why the 10-year lease, why not annual lease, which is 1A or 1B. We kind of look at things when we look at when it comes to leasing property. We believe the $1.2 million project will take about $1 million to move everything out of there and house a pretrial for 10 years, as opposed to setting up temporary trailers and then taking them temporary trailers down. How long, I don't know. I'm assuming maybe 3 or 4 years. We can put these folks in high quality, adequate space indefinitely for the price of what it would take just to put them somewhere temporarily. That's not to mention moving into project number 3, which is almost a $1.5 million project to upfit them in the old patrol division after we move out of there. So it seems to make sense to me that we look at one of the leasing options because for a number of reasons it seems to make financial sense to me. But two, if once we start taking down the roadway building, parking's going to be a mess around here. And then once we put in trailers to adequately put that operation somewhere on the compound, it's going to consume even more parking, which is to the rear of the historic jail. I think that's the only place that you can put it. So I think moving forward, you really have 3 options. You can either go with 1A, 1B, or simply do nothing, and we continue with the projects as they were designed, which would start July 1st of this fiscal year. Our reason for coming over now is because the space is available and its proximity. And if I don't move on it now, we'll simply lose it. I believe McKinsey will find a suitable tenant for it if we don't move on this property soon. So essentially, we're asking for either you look at reserve for contingency money, pay for a 10-year lease for over $600,000, or we look at reserve for contingency money and pay for 2 months of lease. We believe by the time they build that out, it would be around May 1st that we can move into it. So it would be 2 months of lease, then the FY money would become available for the overall project moving forward in 2024. I know I threw a lot at you.
So that, Sheriff, thank you for being here this morning. And so that would explain the difference between why the one option is for a 10-year occupancy lease and the second option is for the 2 months, which would get us into the next fiscal year. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
It's still both for a 10-year lease. It's just 2 options of how to pay. So, and just so you're aware, the 10-year option, the owner discounted. So the $666,000 includes a discount in the square footage and the annual escalation, because obviously he would love to have not only us there for 10 years plus, but then the payments are done for the lease, and it does include the common area maintenance annually. So it includes both the lease payment for 10 years and that. So roughly the savings is about $62,000 to pay one-time upfront money. You're correct in that the annual is continue with the 10-year lease, what you traditionally see, paying monthly out through operating, et cetera, for 10 years. That's just to get us to lock in. So one of the things I had mentioned is we did receive a proposal on the lease. I'm not sure if you've received it, but that would get it signed and started. And then obviously they're looking for us to kind of commit to a start date so that they can say, yep, we're good, you're locked in. They're looking to spend a lot of money and completely build that space out for us and not, and the owner will basically amortize that. So that's kind of why the negotiations took that kind of an angle, to make it a win-win for everyone. They've got a long-term place, we've got a long-term home that's set for us to grow into, that we wouldn't be like, oh, in 2 years, we need space for, 3 more people. It would accommodate something like that. So we took all that into consideration when we did the programming for the space.
Let me also disclose, there are upfront costs to this, and over the next probably
Weeks.
Yeah, I'll be back saying this is what the upfront costs are. We believe the upfront cost to get into that facility will be roughly $300,000. And so when you look at the total cost of a $1.2 million project that starts July 1st, as opposed to we believe we can move into that facility for $1 million over a 10-year period. I know Mr. Zaleski has come in over the last 8 years that I've been sheriff saying that we need a new detention center. That's without argument. We absolutely need a new detention center. The goal would be to move the offender diversion unit within a new facility when and if it's built sometime in the future, so that 10-year mark kind of hits that sweet spot. I would think. I don't know that I'll be around to see a new jail or any of you, but it does at some point have to be put on a capital budget. It's just inevitable. But the goal would be to move that offender diversion unit out of where it's at. But even as we sit today, if you slam the gavel and said, let's go ahead and do this, it would be 10 years before a jail would even be built, with the amount of time it takes to design something like that and get the funding from the state and locally.
And Sheriff, so if I'm sorry, did anybody want to also?
keep going.
One other question. So if given the 10-year lease option, you can conceivably see yourselves being in that building for at least 10 years. I mean, if, let's say for the sake of argument, God forbid, there was some reason why you had to vacate, get out of there, right? Are there going to be any penalties on the 10-year lease? Does money come back? Is there a fee of some kind?
I think the way it's established is that there's a 10-year option and the escalation is set. If you say I don't want to do the 10-year option and we go with a annual lease, then the escalation is set differently. So it would be a 3% escalation instead of a 2% escalation.
And those kind of details of what happens shorter than 10 years are usually negotiated as we go through. So the next step after the proposal to lease is signed, then there's work to actually design the lease and go back and forth with Mr. Burke's office on details.
And it's not like at some point the gentleman or the individual who owns this building, this property, would say, I want more 5 years from now. Like he wouldn't be able to come back and
Not
say.
based on what we've.
They presented these two options to us, and the proposal to lease has both of those. So whichever option you go with, he offered the discounts to for the one-time 10-year payment of $666,000.
And he's locked into that. It's not like he's going to come
Yes.
back in 5 years and say, I kind of, I should have
lease-
asked you for this instead of that.
The lease would actually be structured and signed based off of that for 10 years.
One of the other questions is utilities. You already pay utilities at the roadway building, so those utilities would still be paid at the new facility. So I don't know. I would hope that the new facility is more efficient than an old steel building that we're out of. I would imagine it is, but and the question being, do I see us there? Minimally, I would have to see us there, or even those temporary trailers on the back parking lot, 2 years, 2.5, almost 3 years maybe, just until that. So understand that patrol has to be built, a headquarters has to be built. Everybody moves out of the basement of the jail where patrol's at into the new facility. Another capital project takes place to upfit the basement of patrol, put new bathrooms in, increase IT and security for pretrial. Then they move into that facility, and then those temporary trailers are taken down, and they then start operating. It's kind of a big circle that needs to be done, but that roadway building is standing in the way of doing an awful lot of that. Some of the other portions of that money would be used to, the 1.2 would be to store an awful lot of stuff that's in the back of the roadway building, bedding, records, the things that we don't usually go over and use on a regular basis, but has to be stored somewhere in proximity to this compound. We're looking at options with Jason Green on other buildings that we own locally, as opposed to setting up steel containers out on the back parking lot to store a bunch of stuff temporarily until these things are built. So we do have some buildings locally that we believe we can put this stuff in so that we don't spend $100,000 or $200,000 taking up more parking spaces that eventually is just temporary and it's money down the drain. So we're looking at options like that.
And then that third project, that is something that wouldn't happen. So then to spend that additional 1.4 million to basically redo the patrol area after the new building is built wouldn't happen. To me, that building at some point would be going down. So to spend that kind of money for I wouldn't say short term, but relatively short term, just to then move again, this kind of takes care of all of that in one shot, and then and it's done. They're moved, they're in a place that functions for them, taken care of, and we're not spending all this additional money over all these extra projects and being more fiscally responsible with that type of funding.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is this project in the FY24 budget right now?
There is a project in the capital for the approximately 1 million, a little bit over. Obviously, it's structured differently because it is a capital project. So my understanding is that should you choose to take the annual monthly payment approach and go with option 1B, then there's some work to be done for out year budgets and things to take that project and restructure it. I'm not sure that I'm explaining that correctly.
So basically, the 1.2 would have been to put trailers up, and it wouldn't have been anything ongoing, because it
It's
would
a
eventually come down.
short-term-
It's a capital project, not
4
an
years.
operating project. So it would have been
But there is
short-term.
money there.
What we're saying is that the 1.2 and the 1.5, you can do all this and move everybody out for 40 years if you felt like it, or longer. We're saying that the 10 years is adequate. Then we would have to look at it 10 years from now. Do we have a detention center that's on the capital project? Is that something that we can move, or do we now then go year to year until that's done? Our goal is to do everything under the 1.2 that begins in July 1st, and then get rid of the $1.5 million project that was in out years to upfit patrol. But Heidi would have to go back and do some structure of what that capital money looks like in out years, because it then becomes operating money as opposed to one-time capital money.
And the request here for that 666,000 is taking it out of reserve for contingency.
It would have to take it out of reserves now, but it would technically is the capital money that would be available July 1st. So we're asking for it 2 years ahead of time, and I would imagine Ted or Heidi would be able to explain a little bit better how that money would be maneuvered around within the budget.
So fortunately, we have Ted
Go
right
figure.
behind you.
Yeah.
So if you can, Ted, share a little bit more insight.
Okay, well, we're talking about options here, but really the whole focus has been on this leased space now.
Right.
The capital projects are no longer part of our plans. If we do this, you will need to make a transfer from the reserve for contingencies, both for the lease money and for whatever one-time costs we have associated with it.
I mean, it seems like, option 1A, it's obviously a large amount, but we're saving a lot of money,
If it negates that 1.4 million down the road. And that's my understanding, right? If we go with option A, that will negate the necessity for that 1.4 million at some point down the road.
So we're saying we don't need that capital project to take place in patrol. What a future board, not anybody sitting here or probably me, will have to deal with is in 10 years,
Right.
once that lease is up, have we moved to a new detention center, or then we start looking at annual leases? What I'm telling you is that if you get rid of the $1.5 million project, which we're fine with, that based on the escalation, it's even a no-brainer to stay there until a new facility's built. Even if it's 20 or 30 years from now, you're still, at the end of the day, not going to spend nearly the money to do it. My thing is that we would be spending money on stuff really that's just simply temporary that we're going to put up and take down. just to move people around, and it just seems to make more sense that we position ourselves for 10 years in a place and then figure out where we're at in 10 years from now.
I appreciate that sense of responsibility.
Do you, Ed?
Of course I do.
If it were 1A, when is the payment due?
Good question, Vicki.
That would be part of the next round of the negotiations for the lease, because they'd want to go through and actually have a signed lease on the county's behalf, so.
It's raw, clean space, so it's drywall on all four corners, and that's it. And so they would have to, once they get a commitment on the lease, they have their own contractors, their own folks that buy furniture. They would then start the
Build it
construction, but we would not move in to a facility until it was constructed, but they're not getting money if it's just sitting there. So once this lease would go through, they would start construction almost immediately. We believe that optimally the sweet spot for us would be right around May-ish, June. The other issue is that we've had Sixton and the folks from IT over facilities. We'd have to do some IT there. But getting fiber there and the switches doesn't happen overnight. So we'd have to do a number of temporary things until those items come in and are ordered, so that we can keep track of security and the things that are taking place on that compound. But they've all been worked out with other departments in the county, so that we understand where we're at if this goes through.
What is the, clear or significant risk by doing option C, and that's do nothing?
Spend $2.5 million.
Kind of. You're, like I said to Commissioner Bigliotti, you're if you do nothing and we go with the project as it's set for July 1st, you're going to put up 2,000 square foot of temporary trailer space somewhere on the compound, and that temporary space is going to come down 2 or 3 years from now. I don't worry about parking, because I've got a police car, so but I'm going to tell you, parking's going to be a mess around here sometime in the very near future. And when we start if we were to throw up temporary trailers on a portion of the county parking lot, that's going to take up more, because I've got a bunch of cars that are going to come in and out of a temporary holding area for testing and staff and all those things. I think doing nothing is not a good option. I think we got to do something.
You're also looking at a total cost right now, without inflation in dollars, of $2.5 million for both projects.
Right.
So that's the other thing.
Sheriff, yeah, you sort of preempted one of my questions. So a lot of construction is going to be taking place. There always seem to be space issues. Probably a lot of them are unforeseen. So at some point in the near future, if we do go ahead and do the lease for this, could you, if you decide you have to repurpose this particular building for something else, is that going to be an issue with the lease and the owner?
So if you say we're doing that building has to come down.
No, I mean the building
lease
that you're trying to
space?
lease at 37.
Oh yeah, I don't ever see. It would. This building, we've worked with McKenzie and the folks there, and looked at a specific design for the interior of that building that meets the needs of pretrial and the offender diversion unit. Could another part of my operation or county government? I suspect that it could. It's quality space and it's close to the compound. I don't believe that we would need it if we were to move out of there. If we were to build another detention center and a headquarters, then we would have more than enough adequate space. So if in 10 years something stood up, then I would say we get out of that lease and not even use that building anymore.
Okay.
Option A, I think you said there'd be no common charges, no repair of parking lot, no taxes, no.
So the owner agreed that amount would cover the 10 years annual maintenance at a discounted square footage, and then a discounted annual escalation rate, and the common area maintenance, because they gave us the square foot cost for that. So I actually called and reconfirmed that earlier this week, that they were good with that number covering both of those.
How would that be with option B?
With option B, the escalation would be higher. So it's instead of, the discount is 2% escalation per year versus 3%. And then the square footage is $17 and $18 without. So $1 a square foot for the entire property for the entire lease, and 1% less than the escalation, which equates to about $62,000 in savings over the life of the lease.
So neither way would have, if they decide to repave the parking lot, that's, you don't contribute to that. You have none of that.
As far as I know today, I would say no, unless there's something written into a lease for some kind of a project that they would do an assessment for, which I don't know that we haven't gotten that far yet. But today, no. You're right. The common area maintenance covers all their typical annual costs. You're right. Insurance, snowplow, maintenance, all those kind of things for the parking and the exterior of the building, et cetera.
In either 1A or 1B, is there, or will there be, you're still negotiating, an option to renew?
Yes, we would have additional options to renew. So whether they'd be annual, a 5-year, those are things we'd probably put in multiple options. And the 10-year, Commissioner Guerin, to your question, the 10-year with looking at a potential, that ties into a lot of things. So as we said, with a detention center, if it were to move back, that would be a time frame that we wouldn't be getting out of a lease, but yes, just not renew, because that may be a good time frame. If not, then we would definitely have options to keep them there, because we did take the time to do the programming for the long-term needs, looking at, wow, over 10 years without a crystal ball, what do we think we would need for growth? So we put that into the equation as well, looking at that. But yes, we would definitely put in negotiations to extend, depending on what they would prefer.
And you can look at the building on the computer here. It's been completely rehabbed, and it's good quality space, and the parking lot is equally as nice. It's just quality space that I don't see them needing to do a whole lot over the course of the time that we may be there.
And yes, your question, the owner just completely redesigned and rebuilt out all this space. So that's why it's all being like released. And that's why some opportunities. So it's been sitting waiting for tenants, which they were gracious enough to say, how do you want it built out?
And since it is a lease, and I know it's still being negotiated, for instance, if HVAC goes up,
That would be correct, and it would depend, whose responsibility. That's all part of, that's not in the proposal to lease yet. That would be in the actual lease negotiations.
And then, lastly, I'm curious, Ted, you said where the money would come from. Are there any disadvantages or advantages between A and B on the future budget, on how it's handled, on the cost of time and money, et cetera?
Well, you're getting a better price with the upfront money. We're in a position to do it if you choose to. So that's not a concern for me.
It's like a 10%.
And there's no concerns with budget moving forward because of this?
Other than you're going to have to make an action to
Yes.
fund an unbudgeted.
Yes.
But it's going to, and it's not necessarily for you, Ted, but it's going to happen regardless of when it happens. You just believe that
It's
this
got to
is-
happen. I mean, I think one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago is these two projects that are on that compound, the state's attorney's office and my office. Just say the state's attorney's office takes off first and they start construction. I don't even know where they're going to put equipment and stage equipment, trailers, those sort of things. I would imagine the roadway building would have to come down sooner than later in order to stage that stuff so a company can operate out of there. I'll swiftly kick them out when our project is up and running, but still they've got to go somewhere, and that's a paved parking area. So, and we did discuss that with Mr. Burdine, and there's agreement there that we've got to have space for folks to stage. So that building's got to come down. It's just no two ways about it. It's got to go.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, is there a motion on either one of those options?
Motion to approve the lease for space at 37 South Cranberry Road and the accompanying resolution O-23.03 in the amount of $666,160 to fund the one-time lease payment for 10 years of occupancy.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Have a
Good
day.
discussion.
Yes, sir.
Really appreciate it. Mr. Fowler, why don't you come on up? Reminder just for those that are in the room, if you're here to make comments, to ensure you fill out a salmon color card, I guess, or orange, whatever they are, and hand them over to either Ms. Wyndham or Mr. Burke. So we're prepared to do that when the time comes. And then also those that are on the line, I believe, Chris, you said there's a handful. Same thing. If you are waiting on the line for, it's item number 8, dealing with solar, please be patient. And I don't want to give an estimated time, but, you know, intent is by around 11:30, we should get there. So, if I was to guess. Mr. Fowler,
That puts pressure on me to move quickly.
well, how was your meeting with the legislation this morning?
Very uneventful. Everything went forward as we
Okay.
expected it to.
Fantastic.
Yes. And I believe I didn't hear earlier. Did you mention the Mako legislative reception last night?
That Commissioner Kyler was drinking cranberry and something. What was I to mention?
I just
Oh,
wanted to mention the value.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the value of Mako and some of the opportunities that we get. One introduction we made was with the governor's new Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, Molly Byron, who actually knew that Carroll County had the highest per capita number of veterans in the state. That Prince George's has the highest number, but
Right.
you have the highest per capita number. So we also raised the issue of May's Veterans Celebration.
Right.
She seemed very excited about that. In fact, she's the one that brought the veterans issue up.
Yeah.
So now we have another door to go in besides just the
I appreciate you following up on that, because you're right. That was like the last thing I did before leaving was meeting Molly. She was in the meeting down in Cambridge when we had it with the governor-elect at that time, when I was, it was with the board of Mako. And we highlighted the veteran issues. And she
So
definitely
clearly
took
that
note
stuck.
of that. And we invited the governor for the May event, the veterans event, as well, and the new Secretary of Veteran Affairs in Maryland. The other is the Secretary of Agriculture. We met last night, where I guess he's still Secretary-elect or whatever we call them.
no stranger to the county.
No stranger to the county, and he'll get his feet on the ground for a month or two, and then we'll get him out here and, continue for him to be an advocate for us. But no, definitely good discussion. So, but
And I was
please.
fortunate enough to meet the mayor of Hagerstown, who is now going to be opioids. And great discussions, and you guys have done this longer than I, but I don't want to defend their activities in Annapolis, but a lot of them are very busy. I was almost disappointed that a few didn't make it, but I was amazed at the ones from Baltimore City, Howard County, other jurisdictions that I got to meet and talk to a while. It's like you say, Mako offers some great opportunities.
Yeah, we even had a discussion with the individual in Department of IT who gave
Do
a
it, yeah.
presentation on.
Yep, she did a great
Her
job,
area.
and we talked about how to better ourselves in cybersecurity here in Carroll County and building that relationship. So no, you're absolutely right. Good opportunities. So, but thanks.
So the legislature, the flow of bills has been relatively light. It looks like they're starting to pick up now. In the early weeks, much of the committee's time is taken up in briefings by state agencies. But one of the big events of last week, obviously, was the release of the governor's budget, and there's some differences this year as a result of the referendum in the 2022 election. So the General Assembly, I guess, after having about 6 or 7 years of a Republican governor having total control of the budget, have decided that they wanted a little more control. So they now have the ability to move money around in that in the governor's budget. Increase, decrease, move around. The final budget must be equal to or less than the governor's budget as it's proposed. And additionally, the governor currently has line item veto over the capital budget as part of that referendum. He now has the power of line item veto for operating. So that's one change, and that'll be so as we go forward now with all the budget discussions, that's going to be much more robust, I think, than it has been in the past. You had asked last week about delegation bills, so I've presented those to you. Just go over them very quickly. Senator Reedy currently has two as a co-sponsor. One is to decouple the consumer price index from the gas tax, and the other is financial literacy. I think we've seen a bill like this proposed. I think Delegate Shoemaker was behind it in past years to add financial literacy to the state curriculum. Senator West is the most active of all. He has about 10 or 11 bills, and he's on judicial proceedings, so most of his bills align to that subject matter, criminal justice, so forth. But he does have a couple that I think are important for us. One, he's proposing a work group to look at how can we recruit and retain police through the formation of a work group. Also last year, there was a bill that sort of restructured the way on-site wastewater or septic inspections would be done. If an inspection for a property transfer were to be done, or excuse me, if any inspection were to be done, the inspector would have to have a property transfer license. Now, this bill would restrict only those inspectors that are inspecting for property transfers are required to have that license. And then establishes a new fund for some of the fees that are associated, moves some of the penalty money around out of the Bay Restoration Fund and creates a new clean water fund. And then the bill was specific on how the geographic areas would be represented on the board. And his proposal is to reduce that board by one, and then to just say that all the areas of the state have to be geographically represented on that board. Another one that I think he proposed last year, but he wants to, and he's our primary sponsor on this, wants to require every school construction project to consider placing solar panels on the roof of the school. If that doesn't work for that particular project, then the Board of Ed would have to come forward to the Interagency for School Construction and tell them why that's not appropriate. Also, a bill that's he's bringing back from last year, the Maryland Paint Stewardship Program. So this is a program whereby a producer would contract with a third party to establish retailer recycling of paint. And there would be a small fee added to each purchase on each container of paint that's purchased, and which would ultimately mean that all paint recycling would occur at a retailer. So that really relieves the landfill of paint recycling. It did pass the House last session. It got held up in the Senate. I think it was the fee structure that a lot of the senators couldn't get passed. So we'll see how that moves forward. Our Public Works Solid Waste folks are in favor of that, as you might imagine. And then Delegate Rose is a co-sponsor on a bill that would exempt family farms from a filing fee of filing documents with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, and then exempts the filing fee for any business that has no personal property tax owed. I should say, I mentioned that Delegate Tomlinson is a House sponsor of a bill that mirrors Senator West's bill, that Pickerington Junction work group. So the other delegates have not yet submitted any bills, but I'll keep my eye on that for you. A long list on the environment and ag bills. I'll just mention, I did talk about the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority evaluation and termination. That came up in the MACO Legislative Committee. MACO will support that with amendments. It is a fait accompli. The bill requires DLS to analyze the movement of the authority and what they do into the Maryland Energy Administration, or excuse me, the Maryland Environmental Service. But it also requires DLS to craft legislation to do that. So the STAR Commission had recommended that the responsibilities overlap. So I think we're going to see the authority go away and be merged into MES. The amendments, of course, they want to ensure that there's a continuity and that communication continues to exist. As you know, the authority is a member association, and we would move to strictly working with a state agency. So there'll be some adjustments there. A bill that's not yet been scheduled for a hearing, but it would be PFAS monitoring in publicly owned treatment works. I think that you will see this bill opposed by MACO. That's my feeling. Quarterly monitoring of effluent, influent, and biosolids. The standards really haven't been adopted by EPA yet. They're in draft form, so the bill is a little premature, but it is going to be a big price tag on that. And from what I understand, the ability to actually measure this really doesn't exist yet. So I think this may be discussed in the General Assembly, but I'm not so sure it can move forward yet. Also, there's a recycling bill to require hotels to recycle material. It's very broad in what it says must be recycled, and that MACO will propose amendments because not all counties recycle all materials in the same way. So we'll have to drill down a little bit on that. Also, again, another bill from last session, the task force on recycling policy and recycling in waste systems. This studies and reports on updating the Maryland Recycling Act, but it also will involve the feasibility and siting of regional recycling facilities. That's pretty significant. Another bill from last year, the Climate Crisis Plan. I think they named that Better Together with Our Weather Act 2022. This is another one that MACO opposes. It requires a very detailed and time and resource intensive effort to develop these plans. And so we'll be opposing that. The funding of libraries, I think I mentioned that to you last week, where there is a problem in the wording of that bill where it increased the funding through fiscal year 27 or 28, but then it didn't add the language in every year hereafter, which means that the funding would disappear after that. So the language will be added to ensure that that funding continues after that point. The last two I have for you are two different bills that try to do the same thing, and that is require remote access to all court proceedings. There is a big funding mandate on that. The state funds 3 of the 4 levels of court. The county funds the district court. So it has a pretty high price tag. I've seen $20 to $30 million across all counties. So the support with amendments will be to ask the state to provide all that funding. And I'll just mention in closing, the big things that we're waiting for, the minimum wage acceleration bill is going to be withdrawn and a new bill will be put in its place. Not sure what else that will say other than they want to accelerate it, but we'll see. I think the governor's going to have some influence on that bill. And then, of course, the big one we're waiting to drop is the cannabis legislation. There's a lot of aspects to that. We've seen some of that proposed in the bills last year that did not go forward, that tried to build a structure of taxation and whether local jurisdictions could opt in or opt out, how the tax money would be spent, education or in the general fund. So that's going to be a big one that we'll have to, I think, discuss in a little more detail and probably devote maybe an entire session to that. And then, of course, the budget activity I mentioned that will start to take place. I think we found at least one bond issue that was left out of the budget. And I think the Senator West and Delegate Tomlinson will be meeting over the weekend to try and figure out a way to get that back into the budget. So I don't know if you have any questions or any other bills that you want to discuss.
I do have a question. Thanks, Mr. Fowler. This is great. Going back to House Bill 161, again, the authority that the county belongs to, my understanding is that the county benefits greatly from
Yes.
this relationship. And it does save us money. It costs money to be a part of it, but we do save money. So you're saying that MACO is supporting this particular bill. I just hope the amendments address some of those concerns that I've seen, my own concerns, particularly in terms of cost, because this could cost the county money if we are forced to withdraw out of this.
Yes, and that's going to have to be part of the analysis, is what are the cost benefits of the authority versus MES, and what can be done to try to maintain the benefits that we achieve. So you probably know Cliff Engel, the Bureau of Solid Waste Chief, is a member of the board on behalf of the county. So, I think that there seems to be a split in the membership about this. A lot of it, I think, goes to waste to energy. There's a lot of opposition to waste to energy, and the authority has been, works at, they're not an independent authority that works on their own. They work for the benefit of the members. So, but they've been involved in those projects. So I think that probably plays a part as well.
Thank you.
So recently, as you know, we received fire EMS legislation, and we want to respond back to our delegation appropriately. So I want to get staff to put something together. We discussed with, our county attorney and received some outside legal counsel as well to get I won't say our act together, but to understand the issues and concerns. And we do have some with what was proposed to us. And just at this point feel that it's a bit premature to move forward with that legislation. So what I'd like is for the staff, and I'm looking at you, but I'm really talking to my colleagues, saying to put something together to provide to the delegation, and we can then just go from there. Okay?
Will do.
Is there any issues with that, you guys think? I don't think we need a motion whatsoever. I think just...
I don't think so, no.
Okay, cool.
They're looking to you for direction, so
Yep.
that's good.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Again, appreciate all that you're doing for us down in Annapolis. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Again, reminder, if anybody has any cards for talking points, please give them to Roberta over to my right and your left. As we're going to move forward, let's talk about Carroll County, 2022 Fall Amendment to the 2019 Water and Sewer Master Plan.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm here this morning with Price Wagner, our comprehensive planner. We came to you on January 12th for a public hearing regarding the amendment, and today we're here for discussion and decision for the adoption of this amendment. This amendment is not approved until we forward and get approval from Maryland Department of the Environment. So even though these changes are adopted in our plan, they're not official until MDE approve the changes. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Price Wagner and just reacclimate you, with where we left off.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
We've got a brief slideshow. I broke it down in two different sections. A brief synopsis of what we went over, and then if you need a little more in depth, we have the maps to give you some better insight. As Linda said, obviously this is the 2022 Fall Amendment. And this is for discussion and decision. And just for background, the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners timeline, the Carroll County Planning Commission forwarded to the BCC in November of last year. We briefed the County Commission, the new County Commission, on December the 12th. And as Linda said, we held the public hearing on January the 12th. And we have received no comments at all so far. So the amendments, we had three map amendments: the Freedom Sykesville area for water and sewer, Hampstead Water and Sewer Service Area, and then for the Manchester Water Service Area. And then one chapter amendment and table amendment, which was for the City of Westminster, pertaining to their new water reuse facility and moving forward with that aspect. So again, if you would like, we can definitely show you more in-depth information for any aspect, or if not, we can go ahead with the discussions and then go forward with a staff recommendation and a motion.
Up to you. So would you like further viewing of the maps, or?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that said, is there a motion?
I move the board adopt the 2022 Fall Amendment to the 2019 Water and Sewer Master Plan and forward to the Maryland Department of Environment for final approval.
Seconded.
I got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's talk about the Carroll
you.
County Economic Development and Land
Thank you.
Use Study.
Yeah, so I'm with you for most of the morning here, and today.
You're one for one, so let's see where you
Yes.
go from here.
So today we're here to present to you the introductory to our Carroll County Economic Development and Land Use Study. We came before the prior board and during the last budget cycle to begin to prepare our budget for the next master plan update, which will be in 2025. For that master plan, we thought it was very important to do a couple preliminary studies to lay the groundwork for the next master plan. One of those preliminary studies is the Economic Development and Land Use Study. The last time we did one of these studies was in 2007. That was run by Economic Development and Planning at that time, again, to get a base for what land we had for commercial, industrial, employment campus type zoning, as well as other economic development drivers within Carroll County. So who is involved in this plan? And I'm going to actually invite Courtney up to the table and Drew from our department. Okay. So obviously, come sit down. Yep. And so our team internally is myself, the Director of Planning, as well as Drew Gray, who's been helping through this project, as well as we're working hand in hand with economic development. We've also, again, retained consultants for this project. With me today is Courtney Powell from WGI, who is the planning manager for this project, as well as Molly McKay and Erica Gurton. How do you pronounce her last name? Yes, okay, all right.
Yes.
So she's not with us today, but Molly is. So Molly, if you want to come up to the table, we can switch up with her. They're coming from Northern Virginia area, so I think traffic sometimes can be a little challenged coming from that far away. So what again is this economic development and land use study? This study will look at where in the county economic development should occur by analyzing the county's current infrastructure, so where our roads and roads that can't handle that type of development, our zoning patterns, our water and sewer infrastructure. We talked a little bit about in the sheriff's presentation, our fiber network. So all of the things that you need to put together to have land that can be developed for manufacturing, distribution, all those economic development drivers. And part of the plan is to provide guidance on land use and zoning for the future, market trends, infrastructure, constraints, jurisdictional coordination. And what we mean by that is our partners and our municipalities. Our municipalities have the majority of the water and sewer infrastructure, so it's very important that we have conversations with them and bring them to the table in this process. And of course, engaging the public. So the study is important because it will provide a snapshot of where the county currently stands, how the county is positioned to prosper in a competitive economic region. It'll give us baseline on current infrastructure, land uses, and zoning patterns, and it'll be used again to help draft the general development or next master plan. So again, the purpose of this isn't to say where we should be going in Carroll County, but really give you the information to help make the decisions on how you would like to proceed forward in the future. So again, where and how economic opportunities will be available to ensure the county, again, has that stable economic revenue stream. And this will help guide ultimately the future's growth for the next 10 years in the general development plan. So we have set up, and Commissioner Rothstein is going to be one of our stakeholder interviews. We have set that up with a cross-section of community leaders, municipalities, either their town administrator or mayor. We've also worked with lead businesses within the county. Economic development helped vet this list with us. And then we're going to have some public workshops. One of our first public workshops will be February 16th at 7 p.m. at Exploration Commons, where our consultants will be presenting some of their initial information and for us to get feedback from the public. The reason we chose Exploration Commons is because a lot of times when we go out for community meetings, it's here. So people intentionally have to come here and know that there's a meeting here after hours. And we thought having it at the Commons is a wonderful space. And we would get typically people who aren't maybe as engaged in what's happening in county government. And we could bring those people into our space, invite them in to be a part of this process. So it's always good to kind of meet people where they are. And we thought this was a good opportunity, centrally located, and checked all those boxes. We'll also be doing briefings with the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're integral in this process in helping develop this plan. And then you, the commissioners, will be coming to you throughout this process with findings and potential recommendations to move forward. So again, we're trying to also brand this effort and developing, a simple branding marketing strategy so that when you see this symbol, this graphic, this imagery, you'll know that this pertains to the Carroll County Economic Development and Land Use Study. And just for ease of use, we have a QR code for those that are watching that can just snap a pic and be able to be directed to our main webpage for this information. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Courtney and Molly just to introduce themselves and give you a little bit of background on WGI and Wilden.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning, commissioners. We're
Morning.
pleased to be here. Thank you for having us this morning. As Linda mentioned, my name is Courtney Powell, and I'm the project manager for this study. And with me is Molly McKay on our economic development side. Here is just an overview of the main team players that we have from WGI in Wildan that are working on this. So we have various planners as well as economic development specialists. Molly and I and a few other team members from WGI are here locally just in Northern Virginia. And I'll speak a little bit about WGI and then I'll pass it off to Molly on Wildan. But WGI is a multidisciplinary firm with engineering and planning resources where we look at different land development applications and also future growth. We're based throughout the nation, and really looking into this area as a key development area for us. And so we're pleased to be able to work on this project with you all.
Good morning. Again, my name is Molly McKay, and I'm the managing principal of Willdan's Real Estate and Economic Development Practice out of Washington, D.C. Willdan is also a multidisciplinary technical services firm. We're a publicly traded company headquartered in California with about 1,600 people, but I serve in the public finance division where there are about 75 of us, and we work nationally, really from coast to coast. I've been living in the DMV area for 30 years and have done quite a bit of work in Maryland. And really where Willdan fits into this picture is with the economic development analysis. I'm also a certified economic developer according to the International Economic Development Council. And I am a market analyst and an infrastructure or finance specialist. So we're going to be combining all of those disciplines to focus on the data collection, really to inform some of the land use findings and recommendations.
So as Linda mentioned, our project scope is really a study of kind of where Carroll County is currently to help inform where you all may want to go during your master plan study. So we're here to help kind of suss out any specific questions that you all may have that may develop while you're doing your master plan process before you make policy decisions, and really give you a snapshot of what today it looks like, doing some short-term kind of future projections to give some idea of where it's going. But again, really just trying to help create a great groundwork for you all so you can move on to the next point. This slide shows our general project timeline. We were able to officially kick off the project with staff in October, and we are looking to wrap up the study by the end of this August of 2023. And so we're really starting to hit the stride of kicking off this project with the community in February and with you all today, with some of the public open houses and the focus groups, as well as the key stakeholder interviews. And so we'll be conducting that through the next few months. Also, I'll just point out that by the summertime is when the draft study is really going to start taking some shape and the components of it. So everything leading up to that is going to help inform that with your all's input and direction, and be able to see that this summer. And so what we've been doing since we kicked off with staff in October is really trying to create good framework for this project before we launch officially with the community. And so we've developed a communications plan so we know how to efficiently run this project. Also, the public engagement plan, who needs to be involved, what is the best way to engage this community. And we had a great site tour with staff back in December. Yes. So we got to go in the van with staff and tour around the whole county, take some pictures, learn some things. So we'll be, I think, doing another one here soon as well. And like Linda mentioned, creating a project brand for this project was important when we started, to make sure that that identity was kept for everybody. And just looking forward in the next 2 months, we are going to start looking at analyzing the zoning and land use and how that compares with some of the demographic data and economic data that Willdan is pulling. Again, creating that framework baseline for everybody. Looking at strategic areas. Also strategic partnerships, looking how all of that may blend together, and most importantly, having our public open house February 16th, where we will present to the community what this project is, what we're kind of charged with, but also having interactive engagement with them, where they can work with posters and help give us feedback. We can have direct conversations with individuals and be able to document that and incorporate that as we move on to each phase. So
that's the highlights of this study. We wanted to bring it to you early, and we'll be here as often as you'd like. And we'd like to keep you informed as this progresses forward. Are there any questions for myself, for the team?
To Courtney, Molly, thank you so much. The QR code works, so that's a good thing.
Yep.
And yeah, look forward to the continued interaction and the expectation of you having the ability to be flexible in listening and learning to the community, because it ain't the five of us that knows what's best. It's really those that are our neighbors and community that are living there, you know, and what's best for their streets and what's best for their neighborhoods in moving forward. So yeah, I don't want to say this is a long time coming. I think this is great timing, you know, especially with you know, the luxury of us as a board coming on board for the next 4 years. So this is, to me, perfect timing in doing this. But any thoughts or comments?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all for your time this morning.
Absolutely.
Thanks. And I'm still here.
You are, so you're 2 for 2. So let's
That's right.
have a request to go to public hearing for case number 228, Aldersburg Investors.
All right, so with me today is Hannah Weber, who is a planner in our department. We came before you before for rezoning case 229 was a little bit out of order, but this is now rezoning case 228. And the reason this is 228 is because they actually came in with their application first. Just the other project happened to be ready to come before you prior to the last one. So this is rezoning case 228. And fun fact, that's how many rezoning cases we've had in Carroll County, 229. So we order them numerically, obviously. And so this is a briefing and a request to go to public hearing for Aldersburg Investor 2 LLC. So with that, I'm going to have Hannah Weber introduce the project to you and what the rezoning case is.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll start out by saying that the representative of the applicant is here, Kelly Schaefer, as well as the property owners, Aldersburg Investors, to answer any questions that you may have. But getting into the rezoning request, this rezoning request is totaling 12.47 acres. We are in Commissioner District 5 in the Freedom Designated Growth Area. We are just across the street from Liberty Exchange off Maryland 26. This rezoning request is 4 total parcels that are requesting to be rezoned. They are currently zoned C2 commercial medium, and the request is to rezone all 4 parcels to C3 commercial high. The applicants are arguing that there is a mistake in the current zoning designation of C2 and that there was a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. So since the applicant is arguing that there was a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood, we all had to establish a neighborhood boundary that the change occurred inside of. And this is the agreed upon boundary we came up with. You can see it includes the 4 parcels up to be rezoned. And we go across 26 to Liberty Exchange, going west along 26 down approximately to the 26 and Cleves Mill Road intersection, and then looping back around. Okay, next slide. Yeah. So existing zoning, as I said, all 4 parcels are currently zoned C2. The request is to rezone all 4 to C3. You can see kind of a mix of zoning in the area. We have conservation, R20,000 residential, R40,000 residential, and then also I1 industrial light. So to date, on the January 17th Planning Commission meeting, they gave a favorable recommendation to you all, the county commissioners. We are here today for an introduction and a request to go to public hearing. A tentative public hearing schedule of February 16th has been set, where we will hear staff and applicant arguments as well as take public comment. And a possible decision to be made then, and then if not, on the 16th, we have February 23rd reserved for a decision. That does it for me.
Were there any comments in public, or excuse me, in the Planning Commission?
No, there were no comments from Planning Commission other than a favorable recommendation to move this forward from C2 to C3.
Okay. Any, yeah, please.
Can you do your best and give us a kind of a use case for C2 versus C3? I mean, what does that look like, and what does that mean to the average person? Now it's C3 as opposed to C2.
Sure. So commercial C2 is our commercial medium zone, and that zoning district has less intense uses than the commercial high. We have limits on square footage, size, and also types of uses. C3 obviously is our largest, most intense commercial district. It allows much more intense uses. Larger facilities can be placed there of a more regional nature. And it also allows for a planned business park type situation where you can have a mix of types of uses from the percentage residential and commercial.
Linda, and where can you find, because it's a lot of information, and I know it's available.
Sure.
So where can you find that succinctly?
So that is found in our code. There's a link to the code under Planning's webpage and also the zoning administrator, and I believe the county attorney's office. We also have a handy use table, and I can just show you very quickly.
A handy use table.
Yeah. So when we revamped our code, one of the things that we developed as part of our code effort is to include a use table. And so instead of a list of every single use that's allowed, what we did instead was put it in tabular form by grouping, so it would make it easier for someone to be able to follow along exactly what you're asking, what uses are allowed in C2 versus C3, and them next to each other. So I'm going to go really quickly to our zoning code. Oops, no twos. There we go. And we publish this online through American Legal Publishing. Our zoning code regulations are found under Chapter 158. Underneath there, if you go to the districts, that has every district listed out from our ag, conservation, residential districts, and then our commercial, industrial, and employment campus districts. So here is our C2 district and our C3. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom so you can see the table of uses of what's allowed in the district.
There you go.
So as you can see here, we have the land use description category, the district C1, C2, C3, I1, I2, and employment campus. We grouped liked things together, so our residential districts are together, our ag and conservation districts are together, and our commercial, industrial, and employment campus. Since they're similar in nature with the non-residential usage to the most extent, and then we did them by a categorically, and P means it's a permitted use. C means it's a conditional use, meaning you need to go to Board of Zoning Appeals for authorization, and X is prohibited. At the end are additional regulations with links to other regulations that may pertain to this particular section of code. So this is our one-stop kind of shop of what can and cannot happen in the C2 and C3. So just try to pick out a distinct difference. A lot of the difference too is between C1, which is very small scale in nature, but for instance, and not that we have a conference centers really proliferating in Carroll County, but that is conditional in commercial medium, and that is permitted in commercial high. Indoor theater is conditional in the commercial medium, permitted in the commercial high. And you can also see there's a little bit of overlap too with the lower intensity industrial zones as well when you get into the C3 district. For instance, rental of vehicles and goods with primarily outdoor storage equipment is permitted in C3 and I1. when we updated the code, we spent years with different groups of looking at what makes the most sense and how to place uses in these individual categories, working with the business community, working with our constituents, and multiple work sessions with the Board of County Commissioners. Just for your clarification, when we did this, we only had 2 commercial districts, business neighborhood, retail, and business general. With this effort, we added a 3rd commercial district, which did not exist before, as well as putting into action an employment campus district, which we had on the books but never applied anywhere. Are there any other questions? And I'm happy to send this up to you if you're interested. If you want to look side-by-side comparison at the districts, I can send you the information.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to schedule a public hearing for rezoning case number 228 Eldersburg Investors, is that 2?
Correct.
LLC, thank you.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. Any other discussion? Seen here, none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, let's talk about the FY24 grant application award acceptance for the Rural Legacy Program. Gentlemen.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. So we're here to talk a couple of issues related to ag preservation. They're not properties. These relate to the funding of the program. And I'm going to turn it over to J.P. Smith, our program administrator, to talk you through the process.
Good morning again, Commissioners. We're before you today for the approval for the FY24 grant application and award acceptance for our Rural Legacy Program. We have 2 Rural Legacy areas in the county, the Little Pipe Creek Rural Legacy area in the western side of the county, and the Patapsco Rural Legacy area on the east side of the county. Carroll County has been a major recipient of these grants in the past. We've received more than $20 million since 2020, or year 2000.
I like the other one better.
Yeah.
Right?
Since 2020.
I know, it's pretty quick. Rural Legacy has helped us preserve over 5,200 acres in the county. These are a lot of environmentally sensitive areas, woods, streams, wetlands, and things of the sort. Our Rural Legacy areas are almost 100,000 acres in the county. They're both watershed areas. And each year we submit an application for a grant. Normally that grant averages around $800,000. So it's been a very vital part of our preservation here in the county. So the grant that we have prepared, it reflects all of the properties that we are expecting to preserve within the next year, and we're hoping that they will fund that at a significant level so that we can achieve those goals. So today, we are looking for the approval of us submitting the grant and the approval for us to accept the grant when it is awarded.
Any questions or?
Motion to approve the submittal of the FY24 grant application and acceptance of award to the Rural Legacy Program.
Second.
I got a motion second. Any discussion? Seen here, none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 1 for 1.
Thank you, Commissioners. Our next topic is recertification report for the Department of Planning. Let's see here.
Down at the bottom. Over to the right.
Am I not getting this right?
Up a little bit.
No,
Up a little
no,
bit.
you had it
You had
right
it
there.
up just a little bit. There you go.
Sorry. Not my strong point. So today we are coming to you with our 5-year report for recertification for our Ag Land Preservation Program. This report covers fiscal years 2018 to 2022. The certification program allows the county to keep 75% of the ag transfer tax that's collected here in the county, where non-certified counties only get to keep 33% of the ag transfer taxes collected. The people who review the report are the Department of Planning at the state and Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation. We have been back and forth with the planning department at the state and making sure that we have everything in compliance on our report. We're still Maryland's best preservation program in the state. We are also among the nation's best preservation program. We're number 3 out of all the counties in the nation that preserve acres through easement purchase. Our program operation, we operate independently as well as operating in coordination with the state of Maryland. The programs that we do run here in the county are our Critical Farms program, which is where we help someone purchase a farm and then they agree to preserve the property with the state. We have our own Carroll County Ag Land Preservation Program. We, as I mentioned in the meeting before this, that we have a Rural Legacy Program sponsored by the Department of Natural Resources, and again, the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation Program, which started it all. For the last 5 years covered in this report, we have preserved 7,156 acres at a cost of approximately $30,899,523. That comes out to an average of $4,317 per acre. Here's how it breaks down between the programs: MALF, Carroll County, Rural Legacy. We have a Maryland Environmental Trust donated easement on there as well. And like I said about our premier program, our Critical Farms program, we preserve 1,367 acres, total of 13 farms, and $5,624,000. Currently, we're completing settlements from the FY22 cycle. We have 27 properties in the FY23 cycle, and that's comprising 2,232 acres. And we still have a very strong demand for our program. And if you have any questions, this is who you need to contact: myself, Jackie, our preservation specialist, or Chris Hine, our director.
Okay.
I move the Board of County Commissioners approve the state recertification report for the Carroll County Agricultural Land Preservation Program.
Second.
I got a motion and I got a second. Any discussion on this? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
Thank you, commissioners.
absolutely.
Thank you.
What we're going to do is you're going to take a step back for a minute, and we're going to bring in Mr. Robinson. And let's talk about purchase of staff uniforms and dress uniforms for the Department of Fire EMS, as I believe this will take a little bit less time than discussion we're going to have in item number 8.
Good morning, Commissioners. Let me start out with a historical perspective. No, I'm just kidding.
Morning. I said less.
The Office of Procurement and Cooperation with Fire and EMS requests your approval to award the purchase of uniforms to the Whitmer Public Safety Group. Class B uniforms for staff will include, you have it in your briefing there, essentially all the items to start off our initial hires, and our senior staff will be going to uniforms, including a Class A uniform for all the special events that we attend. The total on this would be $56,219. The Whitmer Public Safety Group does a lot of the uniforms for other departments in the area, and they'll actually come to our site and do all the measuring of the new employees. This was approved in the FY23 budget, and no additional funds will be required.
Thank you, Maureen.
And we didn't even see your lips move.
I was impressed.
That was pretty good.
I was.
But I will let you know that these uniforms through Whitmer Group are through a competitively bid project through CroStars, which is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and most of the items are discounted at least by 3%.
By what percent?
3%.
Okay.
Off the list price.
Okay. Cool. So, Any questions? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to approve the purchase of uniforms to the Department of Fire and EMS from the Whitmer Public Safety Group at a cost of $56,219.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Now, let's go back to item number 8, which is the proposed moratorium on the community solar facilities in the county's agricultural zone. Chris, okay, you're here. Mr. Swam, do we have anybody on the phone?
Yes, sir. We have 4 callers waiting to make public comment, I believe, on this item. With the new version of GoToMeeting, we have no way of telling what they're calling in for if they call in during the meeting.
Okay.
So if you give me an opportunity to kind of go over how they can unmute themselves, we can get this started. Whether you would like to go with the callers first or whether you'd like to go from in the room.
Yeah, let's go callers first. So.
Certainly. Callers, we have 4 of you on the line. There's no way for us to distinctly determine whether you've called in at any time. So I'm going to ask you to hit *6 to unmute yourselves. You will have 3 minutes. At that point, you will hear a sound, and please wrap up your comments. Before you start making comment, please identify yourself in the area you're calling from. And thank you. And if you'll hit *69 on your phone, we can begin. I believe that should work for you. We have no way of unmuting you.
*6, Chris, right?
I'm sorry?
*6.
Caller, they don't know what caller they are, Roberta. I can't do it that way.
No.
We just have to ask them to unmute themselves one at a time and speak one at a time. Okay, callers, begin one at a time. Caller 10, you're currently unmuted. You can begin. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Ryan Dorsey. Just calling in regards to the solar moratorium.
I apologize, Ryan.
Commissioner.
Ryan, what is your address as well?
Oh, okay. My address is 3313 Bullfrog Road, Pawneetown, Maryland, 21787.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I spoke with Commissioner Bigliotti the other day here in regards to this issue, and just kind of wanted to give the commissioners a snapshot how this is potentially impacting my family. Me and my wife, we had been saving for a private farm for years. We've been wanting to get into agriculture and had an opportunity a couple years ago to buy a farm in Carroll, again on the right side of Pawneetown. And unfortunately, the same time that we bought our farm, my oldest daughter was born severely disabled, and she has a plethora of health issues from hydrocephalus to cerebral palsy to epilepsy. And this past year, her health has been so impacted that my wife had to leave her full-time job to be, full-time caretaker for her. And, obviously that's really impacted us financially. We're looking for certain ways to kind of supplement that income. And, we're definitely big believers in some of the green options. We were very interested in solar, and, we had been approached by a solar company that's interested in a 2 megawatt installation on about 11 acres of our 100-acre farm. And again, I just wanted to, share this situation with you, in light of my daughter's conditions. I'm not a big time, investor or company. I'm a small, local, Westminster guy. I grew up in Westminster. I graduated Westminster High in 2003. I've got a lot of family in the Carroll area. And, my family desperately needs this, and this moratorium is really going to impact us. We're looking for, again, some supplemental income and, Really just wanted to, kind of share that story and let you know I'm one of the little guys, that's really needing one of these options to help my family, so we don't lose our home, and really just want to take the time for you guys to consider that, and appreciate you letting me share today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, next caller, if you could identify yourself with your address, and you can unmute by hitting *6. Thank you.
Sure, maybe I'll give it a try. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you. This is Peter Dyke. We have property in the county at 1500 Fanny Dorsey Road, right off Woodbine Road. And we have a solar project that's currently being before the county for final approval. Very similar to the last caller, a lot of the same concerns. A farm is also about 100 acres. Been in the family for, I think, just over 50 years. Want to have it for another 50, and it's just part of the reason and again, very similar, a couple megawatts, which I think is about 11 to 13, 12 acres, something like that. But we're here to express, I'm here and my family in the background to express support of the current solar ordinance and opposition to the proposed moratorium on solar. We've spent as a family a lot of time researching and keeping up with the work on the development over the past couple of years. And I think the county over the last couple of years, as you all well know, has worked on developing one of the most restrictive ordinances in the state and likely in the what we can see. And the ordinance heavily already restricts solar where it can be located and has numerous very smart, we think, and protective development requirements. Builds to the county's land conservation goals that are already stated and on record, and brings in additional tax revenue to the county and saves, residents on electric bills and that sort of thing. So we've been really careful with this. We've been really thoughtful. We started to spend time and money a few years ago. And as sort of further background, our land is, further subdivision rights. But rather than put up homes or another housing development, and which we, could certainly monetize a lot more than a sort of modest solar farm. We've waited years, and it took the county a few years to get this existing solar code right. And then we partnered with a solar developer, or we'd like to, Community Power Group, small shop, couple employees. And we were one of the first to submit a project to the county under the recently passed code. And we've been depending on that code, and now it looks like that's being threatened. So on the eve of this project getting the approvals and needed to move forward, I think final approvals, as I've understood it, now we're being told that the project may get killed because of a proposed moratorium. And it really disrupts everything we've been trying to, carefully do over the last couple of years. And, as a family, we're making this decision, and pretty excited about it. So sounds a little outrageous that this is happening to us at the last minute, this action by the county. It'll cost us certainly a lot of money, and it'll cost the developer the money it's already invested, and tax revenue that we thought would have been well received by the county. I could have just another moment. It's just kind of taking it from family notes here. It's important, and getting a little granular. Chapter 2 of the county, I think it's comprehensive plan goals, it's called. The county specifically acknowledges that the planning process balance, and I think this quote is right, the perspective on planning goals while promoting the need to respect property rights and accurately advise participants trade-offs between various forms of development based on real-world effects. I'm sorry, I was reading that. And the emphasis on the private property rights and the real effects, and we're feeling that, and we certainly value the rights as landowners, and families own this farm for 50 years to put up this modest solar array, I think they call it. So maybe we'll leave it at that. But we made the real decision, and a meaningful decision, a decision that's cost us time and money based on the code that was in place. And it's not easy to research these things and understand them, and it's a pretty long and exhausting process. So that's why we're calling in, and
thank you, sir.
It's disheartening to see that this maybe all changes.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we are going to try and keep it right around that 3 minutes. There will be some flexibility, but I do know we have a lot of speakers to go through. And the intent here is to get the gist of what you're sharing without cutting you off whatsoever, but just be aware of that. So.
And just a reminder, this is not a hearing on the proposed moratorium. It's a chance for you to comment on a proposal to send the proposed moratorium to public hearing. So nothing is getting adopted today, if that affects any of your comments.
Yep. Okay, Chris.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. If you could have the next caller, *6 to unmute. Okay, caller, we have somebody unmuted. If you could give us your name and your address and begin, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Daryl Miller. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hi, we have a property at 75 Lamb Drive, which is Route 97 going just north of Westminster. Again, it's a family farm, and we've had it for about 50 years. And you know, over the last 50 years, we've done different things on it with keeping in mind the historical rural nature of the county, and we put parts of it under ag preservation. We've had forest conservation parts. We've done some tree banks there in addition to the farming activities. We do have substantial development rights on it, which we've explored over the years. But, you know, recently over the last couple of years, we've recognized the county's traffic issues, water concerns in the city of Westminster, and we're kind of coming up a way with that we could give back to the community while also benefiting us. And we started to explore and did a lot of research and time, hours, money, all that sort of thing that the last caller mentioned as well, and thought that solar was the best of both worlds, where we could provide tax revenue, jobs to the county without burdening its infrastructure. And so we you know, we're just and we're in the middle of that process, submitting plans and following the county's restrictive guidelines. And we're in a situation where we think that we can have a solar facility there that will not be able to be seen by any neighboring property owner. And so we do believe that there are parcels within the county where solar can work on ag parcels, and we would just ask that that process be allowed to be played out without a moratorium, and these projects looked at on an individual basis rather than a blanket moratorium on them, because we do feel that some of them, like the one that we're proposing, that can't be seen from any neighboring parcel, that will eliminate in perpetuity any development going on our parcel, would be beneficial to the county. So that's why I'm calling in today. Again, Daryl Miller. Just wanted to share my thoughts and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next caller, if you could hit *6 to unmute yourself and begin by identifying yourself and giving us your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You may begin.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mike Borkowski, 267 Long Point, and we're.
Sorry about that, Mike. Could you hit *6 again? I was trying to change your name. Sorry about that.
No problem. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So, yeah, my name is Mike Borkowski, 267 Long Point. We're a Maryland-based solar developer. We were present at many of the initial public hearings on the current solar law, which in all these public hearings, they discussed the implementation of potential solar ordinances, and it was a really long, thoughtful, and exhaustive process that really vetted so many of the items that we hear some folks in Carroll County discussing. But we sat through those, and then we identified some land that fit all the parameters of the code. It was, in an exhaustive process trying to find all that. And, we put an application in. We were one of the first applications to get put into Carroll County for a community solar garden. We had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering fees and landscaping fees and stormwater management and all sorts of things to get that application ready to meet all the code, requirements of the county. And we went through the public hearing, and there were so many items in that public hearing that were just simply not true. Just things like EMFs and killing birds and property values, and we dispelled many of those in that public hearing. And to have gone all the way through that, now to find out that a moratorium could get put in place that kills the project after all this money spent is just really concerning. And so things like EMFs, killing birds, very easy to research and determine that those things just don't exist with regards to solar. And one of the others I just want to talk about is property values, right? People talk about property values and how solar may or may not impact that. And, there are tons of studies out there that you can easily research and show that solar has not and does not impact property value. But I want to give you guys the ability to do that research on your own. And it's very simple, very easy. You can go on Zillow, Redfin, put on the map view, and you'll easily be able to locate solar farms. There's one in Ten Oaks and in Howard County and others, even throughout Maryland and similar marketplaces. And you can look at historical sales, look at current sales. When the solar farm goes in, nobody rushes to try and sell their property. And if somebody by chance does go to sell their property, it sells at the exact same price that any other near parcel sells at. And so, there's other positive impacts that who your neighbor is going to be. You don't have, the farm chemicals being sprayed on it.
Sir,
your water.
please finish up your thoughts.
And so, anyway, I want to just say that this moratorium could seriously impact us, and for things like home values that can be easily researched and determined that the falsehood's there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chris, are there any others?
I have two more callers. I don't believe that have spoken.
Okay.
If you are here to speak for public comment, please unmute by hitting *6. You'll have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself first and give us your address. Okay. Somebody's unmuted.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Kathy Gresh. My husband Gary and I live at 1529 Old Manchester Road. It's an approximately 30-minute. It's a 30-acre farm. We've lived here 27 years. We've raised our child here. We did attend a meeting approximately 5 years ago, and we began investigating this. We were approached by a solar developer and maybe 5 to 7 years ago. So we've been carefully studying this. And like the earlier callers, I just want to say we support all the earlier callers on what they said. We've been into the process. We're very careful. We're very supportive of Carroll County agricultural history, and we feel solar respects that history and that preservation much more than housing development. In 20 years, when our lease would run out, we would be able to turn it back to ag if we needed to, unlike a housing development. So we are in the process where we could be moving forward within the next year. And we are also, we have 18 acres that are actively farmed now. The farmer who leases our land and does that is very elderly. We're not sure how long that he would be able to continue. And so we would like to add additional income to our retirement, as we are very near retirement ourselves, by having a solar farm, and we hope we could move forward with that. We were very surprised by the moratorium suggestion, and we hope you will reconsider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
We still have one caller. If they could unmute themselves, if you haven't spoken. Going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back to you, Commissioner Rothstein.
Okay, thank you. Roberta, if we can.
Okay. Mr. Mark Hamilton.
Okay,
Oh.
go to the next.
Okay, next. Stephen Roberts.
Good morning. Steve Roberts, 6571 Jasana Court. I'll be brief. First off, I'm unaware of anybody that is opposed to green energy, but where it's appropriate, we've mentioned that before. I'm here because I'm fighting for my pure and natural environment that I chose to live in. Commissioner Rothstein, you've made this quote many times. It's just because you can doesn't mean you should. But many times that gets overlooked when money's involved. This is about money. So my question to you guys, by the way, your commitment to this community, you've said it 1,000 times. You respond to emails. You've come out and visited sites. Commissioner Rothstein, your town halls, I attend those. Very enlightening to me. You are committed to this community. You are in the right roles. Trust me. For my specific case, my question to you is to ask these landowners, I've heard it on the phone calls, they did not buy this property to invest in solar. I bought my property to invest in the quality of life that my family has. So I encourage you to please pursue this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think maybe came back to the room. Mark Hamilton.
All right. Sorry about the appearance. I'm a little hard on hearing, so I don't want to miss
It's all good.
anything when I speak. I'm totally in support of placing a moratorium in effect on community solar facilities being built in Carroll County's agricultural zone districts. Not only be in full support of Carroll County's agricultural land preservation programs, land conservation mission, but to be in place to protect the rights of each and every one of its citizens, families, and their neighboring properties from these solar energy generating facilities popping up and being built nearby that are causing unseen chaos and not realizing the effects they cause on the everyday lives of its residents, as you can see from all these people's testimony. In my particular case, I know you probably remember me from last week. I'm a 38-year resident of Carroll County. I don't plan on moving anywhere. The process of having a proposed solar farm, 17.25 acre site across the street from me, 200 with the first panel, 252 feet off the front wall of my house. And it just isn't something that the people in a residential area want when they're bordering an industrial area, an agricultural area. It just isn't an ideal situation and a place to put a solar farm. So I can probably spare you the rest of my moments.
Sounds
That's
good to
my
me.
point, and that's why I'm here today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
John Miller.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. John Miller, 10533 Dorchester in Woodstock. So I just wanted to mention that the Carroll County ordinance as written was well thought out, had significant opportunity and benefited from a lot of public comment and collaboration. And it took a significant amount of time, I want to say over a year, and it resulted in a very strong and restrictive ordinance. Frankly, the work that the commission and the staff put into putting the ordinance together was second to none. And it does include significant county oversight through its staff, agencies, and planning board. I think there's somewhat of a conception that these things can just pop up overnight without that oversight. Just wanted to briefly go over some of the benefits that these projects can provide. Firstly, there's the tax benefits. We project that a standard 2-megawatt project under the ordinance would pay approximately $1 million in property tax to the county over its life, without really requiring any county services. So that's a significant tax benefit. Community Solar also provides savings to its subscribers, which many times are residents and small businesses, and those are people that's going to be available to people in Carroll County. We project that our project, Project Sunshine, would save approximately $4.4 million to its subscribers over its term. So that's a significant amount of savings that can result from community solar, specifically versus some other types of solar like utility scale. The much larger projects, you don't have that direct benefit that flows from it. Some other tertiary benefits also include the local economic benefits. These projects often use local labor for things like the civil work, fencing contractors, landscaping contractors, benefits during, to local restaurants and small businesses during construction, and a really large benefit, and it actually worked out perfectly, who came before us, are the agricultural conservation. So as part of the ordinance, land is going to be placed into agricultural conservation. You guys have a very aggressive goal, 100,000 as shown, and solar can play a very large part in meeting those goals without requiring the county to pay for it, right? The county, not only have you committed to doing it, you've committed financially to do so. And the ordinance as written is a way to meet your goals without having the county to use their already strained resources to do so. I'll also just mention that, as a developer, I've been doing this for 13 years. What we just are asking is to be a resource for you guys, right? The last commission had the opportunity to go through that. Some of you may not have. So we just want to be a resource through the process, provide you information on what solar is and what it isn't. We'd love that opportunity in a public setting to do so. And also really to, echoing what some of the landowners said earlier, find a way for local landowners to be able to benefit from the development of their property in Carroll County.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Francis Yugas. Good afternoon. My name is Frances Uhas. I'm at 5133 Mountain Road in Pasadena. I'm a project developer with Turning Point Energy, and like some of the previous speakers, was also involved in the original process by which you decided to adopt the ZTA to allow solar on remainder parcels, and appreciate the ability to address you all today. I oppose the moratorium. Like some other callers, yes, we have projects in the permitting process, and it would be devastating to have those projects delayed. So the moratorium would be premature, as none of these projects have been yet able to be developed under the ZTA, of which I believe the thought of the commissioners at the time was that once these projects were, a few projects were actually installed, there'd be the ability to review the projects, review the benefits to the community, and therefore reevaluate the situation then once those projects were able to prove themselves. We wholly support the local control and land use objectives, and we propose responsibly sited projects that incorporate the appropriate setbacks and buffers while enabling the residents to benefit from community solar. So again, the process that you went through before was very extensive, and it was an open process for all stakeholders. So community solar really does support land preservation. It promotes the continuance and viability of farming and agricultural uses. It's a temporary use. It's one of those uses that at the end of the life of the project, it reverts the farmland back to farmable land for that next generation. And there are ecosystem benefits. The community solar, there will be pollinating plants underneath the solar panels, creates habitat for birds, bees, and small mammals. Pollinator habitat in particular is ideally shared with farm and agricultural land nearby. Solar use decreases pesticide use. There's no impact to well water, and there are very robust stormwater facilities put into place. So with that, there's minimal reliance on infrastructure. There are no new roads, schools, water, sewer, or police oversight needed. So with that, I thank you very much. I hope that we can continue the conversation and maybe discuss a little bit about what your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
John Forgash.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is John Forgash, Principal of Soul Harvest Energy, a developer of community solar projects, one of which is located on a remainder parcel north of Westminster. The parcel is owned by the Donald Miller family company, and you heard from Daryl Miller early today. Last year, we agreed to move forward with the project that together we feel could be designed to meet all the requirements while also minimizing NIMBY impacts. My discussions with the Miller family began several years ago, and from the beginning, they were cautious about using their property for a community solar project at this location. Over the course of many discussions, the family educated itself on what exactly is a community solar project, the technology and construction methods used, what would happen to the land under the system, protection for decommissioning, and of course, its overall benefits. Please note that these are the same topics that were discussed and argued at length to memorialize the Solar Text Amendment over the course of the past couple years. Ultimately, family got comfortable putting their name behind the idea of installing a project at this location. As Daryl mentioned earlier, they're aware of the challenges and the changes that this type of this type of development would produce. They're also very, they understand the importance as well of their reputation in the community and also the rules that will be required of them. It just seems quite unreasonable that suddenly a moratorium to roll back all the work completed in good faith over the last few years by local stakeholders, various companies, landowners, and of course previous commissioners is being discussed and potentially fast-tracked. In its most simplistic form, a moratorium would take the decision-making power out of a landowner's hands to use his or her property as desired and in a legal manner, such as for this permitted use. Aren't these inherent property rights a fundamental characteristic of what it means to be an American landowner? Optimal locations for community solar projects that no one would object to do exist in the Ag Zone. Please do not close the door on these opportunities with a blanket restriction or significant delay. Appreciate your understanding and your consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Robin Eason. Robin? Oh.
Thank you. Is it still morning? Oh, it's good afternoon. So my name is Robin Eason. My husband Marty and I own the property at 2705 Deer Park Road. We've owned that property since 1996. My family and I have been and remain citizens of Carroll County, not far from here, since 1969. I am opposed to the 6-month moratorium on solar farm installation proposed here today. The reason given for this moratorium is that more research needs to be done. Well, as you've heard from some people already, there's hundreds of solar farms throughout this county. I don't even know how many are in the country. They've been developed successfully, and all the research has already been done and documented, and it's available, as you've heard. Franny Uhas, who you've already heard from Turning Point Energy, has spoken with community members to expound this experience, but that doesn't seem to matter. What seems to matter is their view from their land, from our land. In my opinion, this moratorium is simply a ploy to waste taxpayer money and time of TPE, hoping they will pull out of the project. I'm curious how, if that happens, how would we be compensated, both TPE and me personally? There's been a lot of money, a lot of time spent on this, and we've had to go through a myriad of red tape associated with installing a solar farm in Carroll County. The opposition has formed an association, a website, and has now written a newsprint article, all to gang up on a husband and wife. All we want to do is do the best that we can with the land that we have. When it became my responsibility to provide, when did it become my responsibility to provide this association's members with their viewing pleasure? This association declares that their rights far outweigh our rights as landowners. Should the association members continue to be concerned about their view of their property, I have a couple suggestions. One would be put your money where your mouth is. They should chip in and buy our land, then they can do what they want. They can turn it into a community park if that's what they choose. For those members whose property borders ours that will have a direct line of sight, we give you permission to plant leafless cypress trees on our property along the property line. What view is not 100% hidden by TPE will be secured by their own personal Leland spruces. Number two, I wish that these people would pay attention to their own property and make the best of it, just as we have done for the last 27 years. Our property is not here for your viewing pleasure, and if you bought or built your property primarily because our property affords you a nice view, well, I'd say that wasn't a realistic idea. If this association succeeds in taking the opportunity from us to benefit from our land via solar farm, then they have succeeded in changing the zoning laws. If that is so, then we too should be benefiting from changing the zoning laws and be able to sell our land as residential building lots. Perhaps we can divide our 41 acres into 1 to 2 acre lots, just as 2 of our neighbors, direct neighbors, have recently bought and built one. Or we could use it for commercial use. To conclude, I would personally opt for the solar farm. It would preserve most of the view and the habitat for the wildlife. Again, my name is Robin Eason, and I support the community solar farm and oppose any delay tactics such as placing a moratorium on solar farm development.
Thank you, ma'am.
For your time.
Cheryl Bossy.
Good afternoon, Cheryl Bossy, 4148 Nora Drive, Finksburg. And I spoke last week and I emailed all of you this week. Thank you for reading that and thank you for your responses to the email. I'm here today in opposition of the community solar farms that don't benefit the community. These are industrial solar sites, metal and glass panels. They change the definition of agriculture. Nothing's growing there. I mean, other than what they talk about maybe growing underneath, which is what's there now. I'm here today fighting for my life, quite frankly. I'm offended, as I said in my email to all of you, that the county and the state would subject myself and my family and my neighbors to this threat of being, the possibility of having to view this commercial solar facility for the rest of my days. 20 years from now, when they're talking about decommissioning, I hope I'm here, but I don't know, that's yet to be seen. I'm also representing many of my neighbors that couldn't be here today because of having to work or other circumstances. So I feel that we're all in the same boat here. We're fighting for our lives, for our quality of life. I wasn't aware when this, by the former board, this amendment came into play back in May of 2021. That was a time when we were all reeling from COVID, from coming back, rebounding from lockdown. Had we been aware, had the residents been aware of what was going on at that time, I'm sure we would have been here again to represent each other in our opposition of solar on ag property. To address what Robin just spoke of here about hiding this from us, there is no way. With the topography of the land, from our decks, from our second stories of our homes, if they put 20-foot complete evergreen screening in from day one, we would still be viewing this project, as would the people who are driving by and the surrounding families. So please continue with your research of this, continue with the moratorium as planned, and then further to reverse ag property back to what it should be, agricultural, not commercial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Macchia, not the easiest one to pronounce and read, sorry.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for the opportunity to give a couple of comments here. My name is Frank Macia. My wife Angie and I live at 3909 Louisville Road in Finksburg, and my backyard is directly adjacent to one of the proposed solar fields on Deer Park Road, 2705 Deer Park Road. We see the whole field. It's 15 acres. We could see it all. There's an elevation that could be as high as 50 feet from the very bottom. We bought this lot and built it in 2018. We did that because this is the last home for my wife and I. We're retired here now, or soon will be. And we did it because I think that the area, including all of our neighbors' homes and their properties, is indicative of the way of life that people in Carroll County want. Landowners have a right to do things. They do. I've heard some compelling arguments and statements, not only from Robin, but the folks on the phone, the landowners. But within the guidelines of the zoning rules and regulations, there should be some limit. You know, we bought this property when it was agriculturally zoned, and that was our preference, is to keep it agriculturally zoned, and because it's beautiful. And now it's changed. Now we can build, or the landowners can build, an industrial type project in our communities, and we just think that's wrong. Landowners have a right to do things for their own revenue stream and their income, but do we have a voice? Do the residents that surround these fields have a voice? We see a rush in our county to get these projects in and get them approved. We are hearing more and more solar farm construction projects throughout the county. It's quite shocking to me. And I think it's because we need to, respectfully, the commissioners, you need to spend some time and look at the regulations and make sure they're right. They're not. They're not suitable. It's not suitable to have an industrial commercial project in an agriculturally zoned area, in my view. I'm talking to Jonathan Bowman, the gentleman that's in charge of the landscaping plan. His landscaping plan is not suitably updated to accommodate solar fields in agricultural areas. So I'm concerned about not only seeing the field, I'm concerned about all the other things that are associated with a project like this in an agricultural zone, to include water runoff potential, to include toxicity going into the ground. Every resident around the field that I'm mentioning is on a well. And there is no benefit to any resident. Nobody in our community needs a subsidized, reduced BG&E bill. I burn wood. Many of my neighbors do the same thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I appreciate the fact that you're listening to us. We need you to listen to us. And the moratorium doesn't mean that these projects are dead forever. It just, do the right thing is what I ask. And the right thing is sometimes the hardest thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Annette Fleischel.
Good afternoon. My name is Annette Fleischel. I live at 1401 Fanny Dorsey Road. I'm directly across the proposed Spring Valley Solar facility. Right after the announcement in the Carroll County Times about the commissioners voted to put a moratorium on ag land, I wrote a letter to the editor. Now, I'm going to read that letter to you because I seriously doubt that they're going to print my letter, but this way I can let everybody hear it. Okay. Kudos to Sherry Greenfeld, she was the reporter, for writing this article and for Carroll County Times for printing it. What was not mentioned was the number of concerned citizens from all over Carroll County who attended that meeting. The commissioner's room was filled to overflowing with residents who opposed the development of community solar energy generating systems, which are popping up in their backyards and on viable, valuable, and currently farmed land. Kudos also to the newly elected commissioners, ta-da, who have listened to their constituents, read their impassioned emails and letters, identifying their deeply held feelings and stories. There are so many residents of Carroll County who live in agricultural and residential neighborhoods, who were born here and will never move away. I often hear people come to me and say, I used to fish at your pond when I was a little girl, and guess who's fishing there now? My kids. It's great to hear. There are also many like me who moved here 20 years ago or less to seek the rural ambience and country appeal. There is a reason why the #1 industry in Carroll County is agriculture. Surprise. Did you know that 50% of the land mass in Carroll County is agricultural in use? That there are 708 farms? Did you know that Carroll County is #1 in ag preservation? We just heard that again today. So on January 6, 2021, before the county commissioners wrote to change the amendment to the development of agricultural land, the Carroll County Farm Bureau penned a letter to reiterate their policy recommendations. This policy had been adopted by the Farm Bureau membership at their annual business meeting in October 2020. And it stated, after reviewing all the information and after much discussion, the legislative committee decided to submit a policy recommendation that, quote, opposed any community solar implementation on ag land, whether it be an ag remainder or not, period. Think about that for a minute. The organization that represents farmers and farming in Carroll County said, don't do this. And I'm sorry, but they did do that. And that was in 2021 of May. Most of the residents and communities in Carroll County do not oppose solar attempts to generate energy. They do oppose the ground-mounted solar panels, the institutional fencing, months of construction in their backyards. There is a myriad of valid reasons, and you've heard a number of them. Put them on rooftops, put them on barn roofs, brownfields. There's a lot of areas. Industrial areas is where they belong because solar panels is an industry. I would ask you, commissioners, do your due diligence, do your research, do your outreach. Seek knowledgeable and experienced professionals in the field of solar energy who are unbiased in their methods. Do not cave into the external forces from state mandates, pressure from solar energy companies to meet green energy goals and projections. Seek the input of your communities and your residents in your respective districts. Oh, I ran out of time.
You did.
So I'm going to go to the last page. On a personal life, my life was completely changed when a sign appeared in the field across from my 50-acre farm, inviting me to attend a TRC meeting. And we said, what kind of meeting? What's this? What about who? Who's solar development? Who's what? We knew nothing. We knew nothing. Please don't let this happen again in Carroll County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Terry Smack.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. Gentlemen, thank you for letting me speak, and I really appreciate everybody that has stand up and spoken against the solar field projects here in Carroll County. I live at 3775 Aaron Jacob Drive in Tawnytown, Maryland. My and my spouse, not a spouse, but my significant other's property backs up directly towards the Brown LLC project that is subject to take over about 10 acres, which would be directly in our backyard. I, like other people, moved to this site because of how beautiful it is. I mean, it is amazing. And to stand out our back door and to look at the few trees that we have and to know that all the wildlife exists. And I have said this over and over. I've emailed you guys a couple of times. But from the bottom of my heart, I really hope that you guys think about what this will do to our communities. Again, someone said they didn't know if they were going to be here 20 years from now. I don't know whether I'm going to be here for 20 years from now. I don't know what's going to happen to that ground. Can anybody give us any information? Those from the solar company, can you give us any information, some history of how those panels affected our lives or will affect our lives? You know, I'm not sure whether you have them in your backyard or not. I would love to know that, because I would love to hear your side if they're in your backyard. And not that you're making money off of them, but that you're in your backyard. That's the point that I want to make. The people that are coming in from this are not from our area. They're not Carroll Countyans. They're not farmers. They're not people who bought their property for the beauty of it. And I think that that needs to be taken in consideration. I'm sorry for the people on the phone that, you know, went into this project, and, you know, I understand if you can hide it, but you can't hide it from the fences that they're being put up. You're going to have berms so high. You know, for some of these people, there was a gentleman here at the other meeting that, you know, his son, from his view of his son's window in a second-story home, could see those solar panels if they were built. I don't want to be part of that. I know that most of the people in this room don't want to be part of that. I know some of you live on farmland, and I don't think that you want to be part of that. So I hope that you will take into consideration to continue to put this moratorium until real research has been done that doesn't belong to have finances attached to it. I don't want the money attached to it, because in the end, most people say, follow the money.
Thank you.
Patty Toth.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Patricia Toth. I live at 6565 Jazana Court. Good afternoon. Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to speak to you today. My husband Lou and I own the 125-acre remainder portion along Fanny Dorsey Road in Sykesville. It is the site of the proposed Project Sunshine Community Solar Development. Yesterday, I sent an email to all of you, including several staff members. I hope you received that email, and I hope you get the chance to read it. And I would like to highlight some of my points in that email this morning. Our home on Jazana Court is adjacent to the farm property. We will see this project out of our windows as well. Those of you that know Lou and I know that we are local. We are business owners in this community, and we have supported Carroll County in every imaginable way. The county employees have taken tremendous time and effort to develop this zoning text amendment. This booklet that was published in July of 2001 defines all of the requirements to be met before these can be approved. Your predecessors, the previous Board of Commissioners, approved this process. I think the time for debate is over. This was approved, it was fully vetted, there were public hearings, public comment periods, and your county staff fully understand the reasoning behind this amendment. I urge you, particularly the new commissioners, I respectfully urge you to talk to your staff members. Understand why this was put in place. Understand the benefits to Carroll County. Understand what is at stake if we don't do this. Your staff also knows that there are previous boards of commissioners that made zoning decisions that were incorrect, and the entire taxpayer base of Carroll County is still paying the price for that. I implore you to take the time, if this moratorium is in place, to read the document that the county put out. It is not my responsibility to provide a pretty view out others' windows. I urge you, the entire board, to come visit our property. Walk the 125 acres with Lou and I. See the benefits to these types of solar developments. I thank you for your time. I'm willing to answer any questions from anyone in the audience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Adam Dubitsky.
Try to read this off my phone. Good afternoon. My name is Adam Dubitsky. The address is 721 Howard's Loop, Annapolis, Maryland. I am not from Carroll County. I represent a group called Land and Liberty Coalition. We work with farmers, landowners, property rights activists, renewable energy companies in Maryland. We also have affiliates in other states too. We oppose the moratorium as drafted. Community solar in Carroll County and around the state has a solid track record of safety, and we respectfully don't believe it should take 6 months to find a balance that preserves everybody's interests, those of farms, trying to keep land in their family for future generations, protects property rights, safeguards the well-being of farm families, economic growth, and certainly the interests of the neighbors. Solar in Carroll and other counties is not the main threat to agriculture. It's residential and commercial development. A farm that's sold to real estate developers is lost forever. Projects for solar, they're not everybody's first choice. We certainly understand that. They're not for everyone, or certainly not for every community or landowner. But they don't have kids, they don't commute to work, they don't take showers, they don't drive on the roads, yet they help fund these priorities. They help fund the schools without requiring new ones. They help fund roads, repairs, and infrastructure without requiring additional ones. I watched the January 19th hearing, and I don't think a single farmer spoke. The people who were in favor of the moratorium talked about protecting their views, but no one specifically mentioned protecting farmers and their land. Quite simply, you cannot protect farms without protecting farmers. A lot of these farm families are struggling to make ends meet, and Annapolis and increasingly Washington are regulating a lot of these families out of their business. A family who owns a farm that is forced to make a decision: preserve it, which is fine if the monies are there in the county or from neighbors, sell it to a developer, it's gone forever, or to use a portion of it for a period of time to solar. It's a choice that they should be able to make. Farm profits in Maryland, they range from about $151 to $620 per acre, depending on the crop. For solar rents, it's $800 to $3,000 an acre, and there's often built-in, I forget the word, but increases for CPI and inflation too. And also, there's no fuel, no fertilizer, no pesticides, no pumping equipment, no farm equipment, no fuel, and no costs, labor costs. The opposition to the solar seems to really be twofold. One are just some, frankly, unsupported claims and concerns about health and safety. If you take a look not only in Maryland but around the country, solar farms actually do the opposite. You're not putting the pesticides down, you're not putting the fertilizer down, and in fact it protects the watershed, it protects the ecosystem, and pollinators help restore the land. I'm running out of time, so I'll just make this quick. There's no evidence on property values, but the other argument that I believe we heard from most of the proponents of the moratorium is simply that we like seeing farms. And what I would leave you with finally is that these farms are not props. These farms are not actors in colonial Williamsburg. They're small businessmen and women. They are not, one person actually said, but we like watching the hay being baled. We like looking at the hay bales. The farmer did not do that for people's viewing pleasure. He did it for his income, and I would just strongly urge you to consider all the claims, not only mine, but also the residents, also the solar companies. Take a look at the facts and find a balance that works for the county, the community, the neighbors, and our environment too. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry, the last name's pretty difficult. No, the last name's difficult to read, so I'm going to butcher it in advance, I warn. Ken
Jonathan?
Good, thank you. It's okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Ken Donathan, and I actually do live in Carroll County to answer some of the questions. I've lived in Carroll County for 25 years. I own a business, Earth and Air Technologies, up by the airport, right in our backyard. We've installed hundreds of systems in the county, in the state, throughout the years since 2010. If you've eaten any eggs in the county, you probably have eaten Sunnyside Farms eggs that we installed solar on. If you've gotten grain, pet food from Bauman's Feed and Pet, you probably benefited from the systems that we put in that sends electrons to their stores. If you took Muffy to Air Park Animal, you probably benefited from the electricity that's generated from that system. And yes, I do have a solar system in my backyard, and I haven't paid an electricity bill since 2013. We employ about 24 employees here, and we're hiring more as a result of this amendment. So taking a step back from this amendment will severely affect what we have in place to assist in the development and installation of solar systems. One thing we have to remember is, why are we here? We are here because the state mandates in 2030 that 50% of our electricity has to be from renewable sources. And they task the counties and local jurisdictions to assist in that. And this is what this great text amendment does. It assists in allowing systems that the county has a voice in where it can be placed. Do we want to step back now with a moratorium and have the state come in and tell us where we can put solar systems? I don't think so. So that's something we have to think about when we go behind closed doors and determine, do we want to put a moratorium? Because it's going to affect a lot of industry. I'm local. I've lived here for 25 years. My family, my grandkids, we all live here. They benefit from the solar, from the projects that my company, small business, have installed. And we probably installed more systems, not size-wise, than any other company in the state of Maryland. So I just want you to step back and consider the reason that we're here is the state has tasked us by 2030 to have 50% of renewables generated in the state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I assure you, nothing will be behind closed doors. So.
Clark Schaefer.
Good afternoon. My name's Clark Schaefer. I'm a lawyer that represents several companies that are doing solar projects in the county. I don't think anybody in the industry or elsewhere disputes the process whereby you respond to constituent concerns and take a look at your ordinances and your zoning. That's what you're doing. I think the dispute is a moratorium the way to do that? You've heard a lot of testimony today. I'm not going to reiterate it because I think that'll come later. But I would urge you to not introduce this moratorium ordinance, but to engage in a public process, which, by the way, was done largely before the implementation of the existing ordinance, where the industry and interested citizens can participate in a work session, a study group with you as to what these are, what they do. So you can take a look at it. Putting a moratorium in at this short notice, as you've heard, it destroys or impacts investment-backed expectations, which are the essence of private property. In other words, people have invested in these things, money, time, and energy. Many of these people have paid thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to your county for review fees. And why'd they do that? Because you passed an ordinance that said before you can do anything, you have to go through this elaborate review process. You've required a conservation easement, your predecessors, but I speak corporately. And your existing ordinance is not without teeth. And it does fulfill, I think one key point that was made was it's really a big contributor to your $100,000 goal of conserved conservation land. I'm not talking about the merits per se here because I think that's for another day. I'm talking about that a moratorium cutting people's, basically off, people that have been in the system in good faith based on your published ordinances. And all of a sudden, boom, nope, not you. And we'll get back to you in 6 months. That's not the way to approach it. The way to approach it is to do some more study, take a look at it, and yes, you have legislative prerogatives, and you can use them. Thank you for listening.
Yes, sir.
Fraser Bishop. That's the last comment card I have.
My name is Fraser Bishop. I live at 2810 Deer Park Road, Finksburg. When I was 11 years old, I wanted a horse. I'm very pro-farming, and my parents made me an agreement. They would get me a horse if I'd run the 40-acre farm. So I'm very pro-farm oriented. I moved to Carroll County in 2007 because I wanted to live in a farming community. I feel like the solar farms is like moving into a commercial establishment. When I drive down the road and I start to see all these solar farms and all. So I'm losing the farms that I love. Also, someone mentioned the fact that the eggs that we get in Carroll County were probably from Carroll County. If we lose all this farmland to solar panels, where are we going to grow the crops to support our beef production, our egg production, etc.? I think you get the overall gist, so I'll save some time. But I think that we need to keep the idea of whether we want a moratorium and or using some of the other things, how we're going to proceed to preserve the farmland and prevent Carroll County from going into a commercial industrialized county. If I want to do that, I'll go to Baltimore County or somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's it. Okay. Appreciate all the comments, both on the phone and here. Mr. Burke, I'd like for you to share one more time the timeline as if we were to move forward with this. This is not putting a moratorium in place. This is proceeding to a public hearing, which would take how long?
The next step, if you're inclined to go that way, is to direct me to schedule a public hearing. In order to do that, I have to run 2 advertisements in the Carroll County Times, in addition to some other publicity. That takes several weeks. So I think we're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks for an actual public hearing on the proposed moratorium. And everybody at that public hearing will get a chance to speak pro or con as to the moratorium on that date. So.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Either way.
I'd like to kind of more general. I want to thank everybody that talked, either on the phone, sent emails, sent stuff. And I'm not anti-solar. I'm not sure where I am with this, but I wouldn't want a 20-acre solar farm 150 foot from our front door. I do know that. And not properly screened. I want to compliment everybody for and against. The comments were respectful. I don't know if we'll get to the point where we can all agree to disagree, but we're closer than a lot of places. And I really, really compliment you. And on a personal note, my granddaughter Juliet, who's 11, wanted the public comment. She almost liked when you said we'd do this at 11:30, but she had to go back into class, and she set for 10 to 11:30, Now, she did send in a letter, and can you tell us where are they viewed? If people that sent letters for public comment, you don't display public comment?
No.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I almost said something stupid. Okay.
When there are public hearings, those, yes, frequently with.
Okay. I just assumed the
management things,
county
but
had a
these-
page on the website
Yeah.
that displayed public comment. Sorry.
We never have.
But at any rate, I did tell her her letter was shared with the commissioners, and she would have bashed me probably, but she has every right to do so. So again, I just want to thank everybody, and I think we need to move forward with at least investigating this. But I understand there's.
I just want to make that clear. When it's a public hearing, those comments are
understand.
are codified and provided. We haven't gotten to a public hearing
Right.
yet, so.
No. I was specifically asking about public comment.
Just in general,
Yep.
no.
And,
We have
yeah,
never done
just-
that.
Like I say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't assume. I'm learning, guys.
Nope.
I'll learn.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well,
So-
that's enough. I'll stop.
More conversation, any motion? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Tom,
Vizio.
I thought you were going to.
I was just going to echo Commissioner Kyler's comments, though. Obviously, it's a topic that there's two very different sides on this. I do appreciate all the emails. I do appreciate everybody coming in, the phone calls. We are aware. We do listen. And we understand it's a complicated matter that we're looking at. And again, public input is important. If you have a concern on any topic, be this or another, we do appreciate you reaching out and interacting with us. I think that's a very valuable part of the process. So thank you.
And then I'll associate myself with the comments previously made by Commissioners Kyler and Commissioner Gordon. I think that the public comment that we've received today and over the last week and a half or so is demonstrative of the fact that we do need to proceed to a public hearing. And the reason why is because, anybody who heard my comments at the very beginning of this meeting, I talked about how we really need to gain a better sense of understanding. I certainly understand that there are some who would argue, well, the previous Board of Commissioners decided to do this and therefore you should follow suit. But none of us would be doing our due diligence as elected representatives if we did not hear out people as this was in process. And I certainly understand the argument, well, why would you put a moratorium in place before something occurred? Well, that, in my mind, that's the time to do it before anything actually does occur, to make sure that as we proceed, we're doing the right thing. I certainly take these arguments that certain property rights arguments and whatnot, and without getting too much into the discussion of the subject matter itself, again, I'd come back to this idea that this demonstrates that there is a need for a public hearing, that we do need better input from the public. And so, I will be supporting a motion to proceed with a public hearing.
Just couple comments that were made. I do believe that nobody knows Carroll County better than Carroll Countyans, and it's not just a saying. Another thing I've learned over time is what incentivizes me doesn't necessarily incentivize others, and what incentivizes others may not be the priority for me. And the reason I'm sharing that is sometimes we get things wrong. So we have to have the ability to either take a step back, to take 2 steps forward, or take a larger understanding of the community, because we got to get it right. And this is not a moratorium. This is an opportunity to go into a public hearing to decide if a moratorium should be in place. This is not a win or lose situation right now. So there's no applauses and, ovations. We got to get it right because we're Carroll County. We got a long ways to go. And with the new administration that's going to be put in place, it's going to be very interesting where he, along with his cabinet, is going to go as we see through the Maryland Association of Counties, and where we see some of the legislation, because it's going to be significant over the next year or two. You know, we want to be able to tell our story. That was the intent of doing this in the first place. It was a 6-month process from December 2020 to May of 2021. It wasn't 5 years ago. It wasn't 6 years ago. It wasn't behind closed doors. It was 5 planning commission meetings. It was during an open session directing the staff to take a look at this. It was after all of those steps, going to public hearing, then to make a decision. Whether we knew about, well, whether you collectively knew about that process or not, that is the process. Some were engaged, others weren't. The Farm Bureau wrote a specific letter associated with it. I think one of the lessons that we're learning is how to get more folks engaged on telling our story in Carroll County and ensuring Carroll County does what's right for Carroll County. That's the biggest lesson that I'm taking away right now. And I'd rather take a step back to get it right to then take 2 steps forward. So I am supportive of this going into public hearing for a moratorium, and a whole lot of work that needs to take place between now and then. This is not sitting on our hands. So with that, if there's a motion, we'll take a look.
I move the proposed ordinance establishing a 6-month moratorium on the review, processing, and permitting of community solar facilities in the county's agricultural zone proceed to public hearing.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. I do have a question. Is the proposed ordinance going to be available or be available? Is it available? It is.
Yeah.
Currently, it's available.
It's
right?
part of the agenda.
It's
so-
part of the agenda, so it's available. So for everyone who doesn't see our agendas, they're online. The proposed ordinance establishing this 6-month moratorium is available for your review or for your situation awareness.
And it will be listed under the section for upcoming public hearings as well.
And it'll be listed in the section
So it will
for
be there.
upcoming public hearings as well. Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to open administration. We are going to take a couple minutes, or at least a minute. We will start the environment a little bit later, not at 1 o'clock, obviously, but at probably 1:45 or 2 o'clock. So,
Wait, see that last part again? I missed that last part you said.
we'll start the environment meeting at probably 2 o'clock, you know, to give us time to get through this.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Get through a breather.
Do you want to do the EAC at 2?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell staff.
Thanks.
Feels good to stand up.
They may be bringing food in for us as well. I asked them to. So, okay, while she's out, let's take a look at this summary of closed minutes from January 19th regarding legal advice.
Yeah.
And it feels like it was a month ago. Any issues with that? If not, I need a motion to approve the closed minutes for legal advice.
Motion to approve closed minutes for legal advice from the date of January 19th, 2023.
Second.
I got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion? Seeing here none.
Can I suggest an amendment? There was also land acquisition discussed that day.
Well, there's
There's
a
a
second.
There's a
Yes.
second document here.
Yes.
I was going to do one and then the other.
Oh, okay, thank
Should
you.
I-
As long as you're aware, that's fine.
Okay. You sure?
Would it be easier to approve both at the same time?
Whatever is easiest for the board.
I'll make if everybody's okay, I'll make a friendly amendment to include both the closed session minutes for 119:23, as well as the, hold on, I got it.
Same date, so one for legal advice and one for land acquisition.
For legal and for land acquisition.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and got a second. For closed minutes for legal advice and land acquisition on January 19th. Any discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So, open admin. We did that already. So before we go into agendas, we had a conversation earlier wanting to go through the election process for the officers of the Board of County Commissioners. And either before we go right into that, is there any discussion that we want to have?
How do we want to do balloting?
We have them.
We have them?
Yep.
Yeah. So you
So-
vote for the president, then vote for the vice president.
I'd like to call for a point of order on that, though. Barring that we have no rules, practice, or precedent other than we've done voice vote to date, I'd like to have an open, transparent fashion in which that we do every vote in this room and that we do not allow secret ballot and that we use strictly voice vote for today's ballot.
It's up to you. Totally.
You okay with that?
But when you say voice vote, do you mean by general consent? Do you mean specifically we each?
Specifically, we would each vote for who we're voting for versus it being a written piece of paper. I think transparency is what we all wrote on when we got elected, and I think it's utmost importance in all that we do, so I think it should be
Okay.
completely transparent.
Sounds good.
Agreed.
So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, real quick before what?
So,
Yeah, so
We'll go
so let's,
by commissioner.
nominate somebody. I would
Well,
think.
yeah,
So
I was going to say that's the first step.
Well, before we go into this, I just want to say, very clearly that, whatever the outcome of this is, whoever votes for whoever, it's not going to change the, the working relationship or the friendship that we've built up with each other. I want to say very clearly that, however anybody votes is not going to affect my opinion of you in one way or the other. I know that, to some people that this can seem like a serious major thing that's going to divide or make or break or whatever the case is, but again, from my perspective approaching this, I'm not, I don't hold grudges, I don't do anything like that, so please don't feel that well, I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So
And along with that, I
So-
think the public, I'm not sure, fully understands, but to piggyback that, these offices are kind of an administrative function kind of deal, and
Solely.
we do all work together regardless.
yeah, there's
Correct.
So
solely
there was-
administrative.
Dog win is you,
Right.
but yeah.
Because there was some social media, saying that the president, which is me, sets agendas, which I do not, has a higher level of being than the others, and I absolutely do not. It is an opportunity to gavel in and out of a meeting, and on the bylaws of the Ag Board meeting that I participate in the Ag Board. I'm not sure there's much more to it than that. Doing the weather calls, I've been participant in. So,
I think the way to go about this then is to make a motion.
sure.
I'd like to make, can I,
Go
not to
ahead.
interrupt. Can I make one clarification? I know this was discussed, or at least has been in previous boards. Are we looking at a one-year term, or are we looking at potentially a two-year term? Because historically, it has been a one-year term minus the 59th board, where there were two singular one-year terms by one party, where the entire board selected that individual as president. And I know there has been two-year terms in a more recent fashion, but I guess we need to discuss that as well.
Well, so keep in mind, years ago, before you had 5 commissioners by district, it was just done by whoever was the highest vote getter, because the board ran across the organization. And I don't know, I wasn't here at the time, whether there was even a vote, or it was just a fait accompli,
Right.
because you were the highest vote getter, you got president and then vice president, and there was a secretary at the time. Since then, the boards have had, until the 61st board, have had annual elections. And you're right, the one person did get elected at least twice in a row in the 59th board. The 61st board, at my urging, went to 2-year terms. You can do what you want with regard to, terms of office. So it's totally up to you. But it is difficult for folks, especially even inside the county, but especially outside the county, to keep track if we do change annually. So that's the only reason I sort of vie for 2-year terms, but it's totally up to
I'll
the
make a
board.
motion that the officers are elected into a 1-year term.
Second.
Second.
I got a motion in a couple of seconds.
One question, are there term limits? Can somebody be reelected?
That's totally up to you.
That's us. That's us.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So 1-year terms, but somebody,
Yeah.
like Garrett County's had
Right.
some guy for 6 years
Right,
because he
that-
keeps getting reelected.
right, that-
So-
that's up to
but-
them.
But there would be election once
Sure,
a year. Okay,
absolutely.
Gotcha.
I think it'll be imperative for this particular board to clarify a couple of those things going forward. You know, how is that done? So I'm prepared to make a motion, but I will mention that, and I know we're not the,
Bear with me. We got the motion and a second regarding the 1-year term. Is this put into that, or should we vote on that and then go to where you want to go? Either way,
I don't
I'm
know.
fine either way. I just need to, either keep the motion and second on the floor or withdraw.
sure, yeah, I would second that motion for a 1-year term.
Okay, so now I got a motion.
motion on
in
the table?
3 seconds. So is there further discussion on the motion and the 3 seconds we have? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Okay.
now, so we got that.
So all I can do, I know we're not the Board of Education, Mr. Kyler, you're intimately familiar with that, but just a few key points before I do make my motion, or I can make it. The Board of Education, right across the parking lot from us, does do 1-year terms. And as far back as I can tell, the first act of that board was to appoint a new president and vice president. That's the first thing they did. And that has been the case for the Carroll County Board of Commissioners dating back to 2010. In December of 2010, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, in December of all those years, the new board, the first thing they did when they raised their right hand was to choose a new president and vice president. In January of 2021, and I don't know the details, but Commissioner Rothstein was elected president. I don't know what the delay was in there. But clearly 50-something days have gone by, and I'm just going off of what the Board of Education's done, and I know that doesn't necessarily work for us, but the first thing they did was make a motion, and I will do that. I motion, noting the prior history well documented in accordance with prior elections, I declare the office of the President of the Carroll County Commissioners, that's the President and Vice President, vacant. That's the first thing they did when they started that meeting. They have to declare it vacant.
So is that the motion that you want to make?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay? Any discussion on now having a vacancy? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now, is there a nomination for the position of President of the Board of County Commissioners?
I will nominate Commissioner Rothstein for the ensuing 1-year term as President of the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second it. Okay, I got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, against?
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, aye,
I said aye.
okay. 3-2, so I'll retain President of the Board of County Commissioners for a 1-year term. Now, do I hear a nomination for Vice President of the Board of County Commissioners? I'll make the motion of Commissioner Kyler as Vice President of the Board of County Commissioners for a 1-year term.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing here none. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you say aye? Against? Oh, you're good? Okay. Okay, 5. Cool. I don't believe we've had a second and a secretary and all that, and I don't
We haven't
believe
had a
that's
secretary.
necessary. So let's
That was
just.
abolished a few years back for whatever reason.
Well, we did
they
that,
stopped doing
I think in 2019, we stopped it because it was no value.
There just wasn't.
Yeah.
At the
Okay.
time, years ago, the secretary was the person, the only duty that they, so to speak, duty that they had. They did once, and it was to be the third signature on
Right.
official checks and things, but there's no need for that, so.
Wanda, why don't you come on up?
And while she's coming up, and we don't need to beat everything to death, but in my brief past, and I assume moving forward, the president has said, we're invited to cabinet meetings, we're
Always.
invited to stuff,
Always.
and I assume it's going to continue to be like that. We're open, and like I say again, it's not he doesn't lock his door.
Always. Oh, I refuse to lock my door. And the expectation is to get back into the timing where it'll be probably December before the new year, and we'll go from there. So it'll not be quite a year, but
It was
you know,
just,
like
the last time was just that the board
I'm not even
decided
sure
what was
why.
going on, that they just decided to do it in January instead.
Honestly, I don't know.
There was no particular reason.
I know.
I-
Yeah, I don't remember. So
I'll go with Commissioner Kyler's words. I don't guess we don't need to beat a dead horse on this one, but
Just before we do that, handed out a draft letter to Senator Cardin about that SAFER grant. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. If you're good with it, it's in here to sign. There's a couple things for the board to sign, and then there's some things for the president to sign. It's all for the board.
I'm very grateful that the letter now reflects the number of medical calls that we've had in the county. I think that's incredibly important as we approach the senator with information about the SAFER grant.
that was the big thing, was qualifying the numbers. Okay. Monday, January 30th. Wow. Sandy Mount Cub Pack 395. Commissioner Kyler will terrify the Cub Scouts of 395 at 6 p.m. At 6:30 p.m. is the Maryland Association of Counties Coalition Bill Review. Commissioner Kyler, if he's not beat up by the Cub Scouts, will attend with me. That's been valuable. So, 12 p.m. on Tuesday, January 31st, Carroll County Health Department meet and greet lunch at the Health Department, Westminster. Commissioners Gordon, Guerin, and Vigliotti. I'm not sure. I thought it was on my calendar as well. Let's check with Vivian, because I think it is. Is it on yours or no?
What's that?
The Health Department lunch?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think it's all of us.
Yeah, I thought it's on my calendar.
Right.
You guys are so fancy with your calendars on your phones. I still use a paper calendar.
Terrifying. So, Wednesday, February 1st, I will not be attending the Fort Meade Alliance Key Leader Series, unfortunately. But I will be participating in a subcommittee for Maryland Association of Counties dealing with taxes. I will be, and Commissioner Kyler will be on the subcommittee for education. And then we will both be participating in the Maryland Association of Counties Legislative Committee meeting, and that'll be virtual. The two of us will be going down to Annapolis, and then we'll meet with the delegation afterwards, just opportunity. 6 p.m. that evening is a Planning and Zoning Commission. Will be virtual with Commissioner Gordon, and then at 6 p.m. on Wednesday is the Board of Education FY24 operating budget hearing.
Is there anyone who wants to attend as an official, as ex officio for the board?
I will attend, so you can put me on the 6 p.m. Tell Vivian I'm a glutton. It's my Weight Watchers program. Thursday, February 2nd, we go into close, 8 a.m. We go into open. We have the rezoning case number 229 Hutton Street 21 LLC. Request approval to accept money from the 911 board. Ms. Hawkins from Public Safety. Request approval to purchase 5-year renewal contract to Priority Dispatch. Again, Ms. Hawkins, I guess she's on for a few. Request approval to accept the funding for the Maryland 911 Board. And then request approval to make a purchase from Carousel Industries using the combination of 911 Board, Homeland Security Grant, and operating budget funds. Then DPW guardrail repairs and install in various locations. And that'll be it for that week.
Actually, starting that day, and then the next 4 weeks, we'll be scheduling all of the agencies that the county funds to come in and have 15-minute, and it'll be up to you guys to keep them to 15 minutes. We tell them. You have to hold their feet to the fire. Presentations on basically what they do and how they do it, as we've discussed.
Monday, February 6th, Maryland Association of Counties Rural County Coalition Bill Review, Commissioner Kyler and I at 6:30 p.m. At 7 p.m. on Tuesday, I'll be attending the Ag Center Board meeting. On Wednesday, Maryland Association of Counties again, Commissioner Kyler and I will be participating. Board of Education Board meeting, FY24 preliminary budget adoption. Please take a look. Who wants to be a taker on that? It's at 5 p.m. on Wednesday. Thursday, February 9th, we got we got the Public Library Exploration Commons funding. So we got Andrea Bursler coming in. FY23 second quarter budget update from Mr. Zaleski, rezoning case number 229 Hutton Street 21 from Department of Planning. Briefing on the 2024 Consolidated Transportation Priority Letter from, again, Planning, Ms. Eisenberg, and that's all right now scheduled for
But there will be a
February 9th.
1 o'clock also.
And there'll also be a 1 o'clock. Nothing scheduled on the 10th or the 11th, and on the 12th, I have the podcast.
One question. That meeting's 2 weeks from today, and you think that would be premature to do the public hearing based on your advertisements, et cetera?
Tim,
Mr. Burke?
you paying attention?
Yeah, sorry. That's 2 weeks from today. You think that would be premature to do the public hearing that day?
It takes, yes, it takes
So
more than that for me
maybe
to
the
get
next
to Carroll
week.
County Times to publish the
Okay.
advertisements.
Okay.
Has to be advertised in the newspaper twice
Oh, I
over 2
know.
weeks, so it takes.
Successive weeks.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, what I need is a motion to adjourn, and then,
Right, because you're meeting with the EAC.
so,
Motion to adjourn.
right, or do I need a motion to recess to?
No, you're going to another
Yeah.
person's meeting, another
Right.
organization's meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I got a motion to adjourn. I need a second.
Second?
All in favor?
All right.
Okay.